It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Andy Ihnatko, Alex Lindsay, Jason Snell, they're all here. Great show coming up for you. Yes, we'll talk about the new iPhone 16e, the replacement for the SE, pros and cons. We'll also mark the birthday of Steve Jobs. He would have been 70 years old yesterday. And we'll talk about Apple's $500 billion promise. All that and a lot more coming up next on MacBreak Weekly.
Podcasts you love
from people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 961, recorded Tuesday, February 25th, 2025. Put a handle on it. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show we cover the latest Apple news with our esteemed, peerless panel of Apple prognosticators. Andy Ihnatko is here from GBH in Boston. Hello, Andrew.
Hello. I'm wearing like we are like that scene in The Wizard of Oz where all of like the munchkins that they're not sure it's safe yet, but they're kind of coming out a little bit. And that's what New England is like today because it's 51 degrees.
Ooh,
and we're like,
balmy.
We are going to go out without long underwear, but with long pants. But we're going to dare to go out in a long sleeve shirt without a jacket and hope that at 4 o'clock it doesn't drop down to 20 degrees.
We're out of the woods.
We've been lied to before.
We're out of the winter. Nice to see you, Andrew. Jason Snell also here. 6colors.com.
Yes,
ladies and gentlemen.
Indeed.
He is the man behind the Incomparables and a proud winner of an Oscar, it looks like.
That's an Macworld Eddie Award, and I didn't win it. I gave them out, so I got to take an extra. It fell off the back of the truck on my way out the door.
For safekeeping,
you know what I'm
off-site backup.
Talking about there. Yes, indeed. But I bestowed so many of them that I thought it would be only right. It's good. I appreciate being called peerless. I think that's because our peers all left, and we are the ones
there
who
are
remain.
no peers.
But that's okay. It's okay. It's good to be here. Also in the 50s here, but it's California, so that's every day.
That's
literally.
chilly, actually.
Literally every day.
Yeah.
Hard to find a day at my house where it's not in the 50s at some point.
Also in Northern California, hiding in his fortress of solitude, Mr. Alex Lindsay of Office Hours. Hello,
we're
Alex.
approaching. I think we're going to hit near 70 today here in
we've had some balmy weather, haven't we?
Next couple of days.
Weird.
I don't. My daughter and I both enjoy cold weather, so we're kind of like the end of the good. The good times are gone.
It's funny. We're talking about the weather like old friends who have nothing to say to one another. But
Mike Hurley on the Upgrade podcast, he had to make a segment called Snell Talk where we talk about something other than the weather that is suggested by a listener, because otherwise it was always going to be the weather. So we're steering out into the skid. You steer into the skid, right?
Sorry,
there's a new iPhone.
There is a story.
Kind of.
There is a story.
You could go. It's being sold as an iPhone. That's technically correct.
Made from various old parts and one new part and sold as a new iPhone. Yes.
Bloomberg, Mr. Mark Gurman says Apple is abandoning the smartphone budget market with the 16e. It's true. It's $600, $179 or $170 more than the old SE.
Yeah, I'm keep trying to figure out how I feel about that. I think what I've landed on after a week is that it's okay that it's a damn shame, but it's okay that Apple is no longer making a budget phone. The 16e is definitely just simply the least expensive iPhone in the lineup. I'm sure we'll talk about it, but it's also like, yikes. I mean, I don't know. I've been spending the past few days comparing what $600 in an iPhone 16e will give you versus what $600 in a Google phone or a Google Pixel phone or a Samsung phone or a nothing phone and Android will give you. They're much bigger. You get a lot more value on the Android side of the fence, even if you don't want to go as low as $300 or $400. And I'm just trying to figure out exactly who the 16e is for, and I haven't decided yet what it is.
I guess my question also is, though, is how many people, now I buy the phone, like I just buy the phone and then I trade them in, I do whatever, but it seems like a lot of the carriers are giving you the phone, I mean, all the way up to a 16 Pro with your membership. So I don't know, I think part of this whole thing is that a lot of people are eligible for upgrades or they're getting them with their service, and so I'm not sure that the number, I don't know how many people are paying for that in cash. Again, I pay for mine in cash, but I don't know how many people do that.
In
I
different
guess
countries, it can be different, but like
Right,
I think here's this is going to be terrible because it's nuanced. But Ben Thompson at
How
Stratechery
dare
actually
you?
did. I know on the
I'm not
internet.
going to listen
What?
to this garbage.
can we
New
talk
Orleans
about the
crap.
weather instead, please?
And what Ben Thompson at Stratechery pointed out, like he looked at iPhone SE prices using basically taking inflation out of it, right? So that you could the real value, real cost. And you think that he's winding up to say, see, it's actually about the same. It's not. It's still a price increase. It's just not as much of one as the 40% price increase makes it look like a lot. But I will say, I think a couple things are going on here. One is Apple really wanted to move their entire phone line to the essentially 7-year-old iPhone 10 platform, where you've got OLED, you've got the notch, so it really is the iPhone 10. You've got Face ID instead of making Touch ID. They've had that on the production line for a long time, but it's probably more expensive than the old Face or old Touch ID and non-OLED display was. And there's that. And then there's Apple Intelligence, which, love it or not, like Apple has decided all of its new models have to have Apple Intelligence support.
I think that's the real reason.
And so
isn't it?
I think you put those two things together, and the bill of materials for this thing is way higher than the old SE was. And you know what? Apple is they're not going to turn down their traditional profit margin on hardware. They're just not. And so here we are. It does create an interesting kind of like, $599, $699, $799, $899, $999 kind of price spread on iPhones that Apple is currently selling. But and the other thing Ben Thompson pointed out is if you look, we've all been feeling like the SE was a good way for Apple to have an entry into selling a new phone in some markets that do not have the buying power of the big industrialized nations. The evidence is not as strong on that count. And this may also be Apple sort of admitting that these are the phones that Apple sells are the phones that are in this class, and they don't sell a $420 phone is not really what Apple's entire game is.
Yeah.
Two questions.
I was talking to
two questions. Hold on.
Go ahead.
Is this an example of Apple preparing ahead of time for incoming tariffs? Like they want to build the tariff in?
I can't imagine that they would have done that 3 years ago. I think I think that this.
They avoided tariffs 3 years ago, though.
Yeah. Well, but I think that this
you think they'll avoid them this time?
I just think that this is more of a world phone. I was talking to another analyst a few days ago who was developing the theory that it's not a single market phone by any means, but part of the mandate of the 16E was we have to have a phone that will compete in China, where they have amazing, not necessarily cheap phones, but mid-level phones. And so that if it's okay for Apple to be the, hey, you want to buy you thought you wanted to buy a Huawei phone, but for even $100 less, you can get the prestige of this wonderful luxury
and
brand.
And of course,
Apple
tariffs in China, right? So
yeah,
they don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, Apple could reprice it later if they really need to, but I think that's one of the things.
That would piss off the president.
That's why they call it money.
Remember,
I would say it's a little bit
diplomatic here, right?
I would say instead of that's why they call it money, I would say that's why they have the profit margins. That's they can afford some fluctuation, and they do that. They talk a lot about how they get hit by foreign exchange a lot. Tariffs is not foreign exchange, but it's a similar kind of
idea.
Cost that can happen. Right. And that, honestly, that is one of the things they do with having their margins where they are, is they don't have to float the prices internationally as much as you might think that they do. I'm sure if they got hit by tariffs, they would figure out a way to deal with it. I don't think that's the story here. I think that this is the convergence of wanting to go to an OLED Face ID platform where I think that hardware is more expensive. Even now, I think it's more expensive than what was on that model, and having to do Apple Intelligence because they feel like they just parity. They have to. They don't want to sell a phone to people who might at this price point buy it for 5 years and say, yeah, but this doesn't have all of the stuff we've just been advertising to you for the last 6 months.
There are some concessions. There are some things missing. But let me get to the second question, then we'll talk about what's missing. Second question is, do they not still sell older iPhones at a lower cost? Are those off the...
Not really. Yeah. They're all...
That's it.
In the US, it's just the 15, which is $100 more than this.
Oh, so there's nothing cheaper than this.
No, the 14 was at this price point, I believe, or was at the 100 up price point, and they've replaced the 14. I was talking to my colleague Dan Morin about this last week, and he suggested it's possible that they're even literally using the production line for the 14 to make this phone, right? You just flip it over, because they were selling new 14s, even though it's a 2-year-old phone, and they are still selling new 15s, and that's how they get that 100 up price point. So with no Apple Intelligence support, which is kind of weird, but you got to do what you got to do. Yeah. So I think
the other thing, the benefit is that these look like binned A18 chips. In other words, A18s that were made for the Pro, but didn't pass muster because
one of their cores isn't working, so you can sell it as a -1 core CPU.
So and this happens all the time in manufacture. You have you test the chips that come off the wafer, and if they are not up to snuff, you put them in different bins capable, depending on their capabilities. And in this case, Apple doesn't really have a place to put binned chips, so maybe this gives them a way to sell. Maybe they have a bunch of A18s without the 4th core or GPU.
I think Apple doesn't really talk about what's in the Apple TVs.
Right. Well,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, there are a few places they can put them.
It's all
right. That's the bottom bin.
It's all part of their plan too, right? Like, I mean, the story of Apple Silicon, we can talk about this a little later with the one new thing that's in this phone, but part of the Apple Silicon plan all along is Apple knows where they're going to use those chips. They know what models they're going to go in, and I think at this point they know where they're going to use the binned versions of those chips too, and they've got a whole little strategy of this will go in the Pro phone, and this will go in the non-Pro, and this will go in the E, and this will go in an Apple TV or an iPad, and they have this kind of plan about where all of those chips, including the ones that are tossed in the bin, are going to go.
So they did discontinue the SE, right? So that's gone.
It's gone, and the 14, yeah.
Interesting.
That is a little bit heartbreaking. $430 for an iPhone to get you in the door. It's either to get you in the door or to make sure that everyone in your family can use the same services, the same content, the same parental controls. I thought that was a pretty important thing. But
you've always said that, Alex, that the kids get the cheaper iPhones.
Oftentimes
what do families do if there's no cheap iPhone anymore?
Well, I think that some of the math might also be that they look at what you end up buying, because whatever the base price is, you go in and go, oh, it's $449. That gets you in the door, as Andy said. But then but by the time you go, oh, I really need a little more RAM, or I need a little bit more of that, they're seeing
good, better, best.
Yeah. So so I think that they oftentimes find that people aren't buying that lowest cost one, and if they are, oftentimes they're shifting over to even lower cost Android phones.
So there are two things gone now from the Apple lineup. One is the home button. There are no Apple iPhones that have home buttons anymore,
which is unfortunate. I still like the home. I still like the fingerprint better than the facial.
I do too.
Yeah.
And actually, I really use the fingerprint on the iPad Mini. In fact, when I need to use my password manager, I prefer to use the Mini because I can use a fingerprint instead of, especially in bed at night, going like this. Yeah. And the thing is, I was wearing this hat.
It'll make me raise my head 6 inches.
I was wearing this hat, and it didn't know who I was. Yep. So
Whoa, where'd Leo go?
Someone broke into the studio with Leo's credentials.
You see, even you don't know who the hell I am when I wear that. So I miss that. And the Lightning, there's no more. The only thing with Lightnings, are they still selling the iPad? No, there's nothing with the Lightning anymore, right?
No. No, I think that's it.
Throw out all your Lightning cables, kids. You don't need them anymore unless you got some old AirPods or something.
And there's a third one, although in a technicality, the iPhone 14 was the last iPhone, pretty much the last device Apple was making that was sold in a Project Red configuration.
Oh, that's sad. I love those Red phones.
It's not so the Project Red line is not completely done. You can still buy a Project Red iPhone 14 case, but oh well.
It may come back. Who knows? It may be.
It may.
I love what they said about the 16E in terms of the colors. It says so much about Apple's attitude toward this. It's like, yeah, look, iPhone 15 comes in lots of colors. iPhone 16, lots and lots of colors. Oh, the 16E, well, you can get it in black or white.
Is that it? Really?
You want color, you got to pay, buddy. Color, you got to pay.
Wow.
Simplify the line. It probably also looks at what the vast majority of people they're aiming for the middle. I bet you it's I bet you they're hitting 90% of the market.
Unobjectionable.
With black and white.
Uninteresting, but unobjectionable.
Any color you want, as long as it's black or white.
Throw a case on it.
Not colors.
I oscillate myself between dark gray and black. like those are the two that I generally buy. So.
Yeah. Actually, what color? I don't even know because I have it
Because
in the case.
I was the same thing. There was
pretty. It's that cream thing.
There was one time that I bought like, you know what? It was like. Was that winter in New England where it was absolutely, we were getting dumped with snow every 3 days. It was never ending. And like sometime around January, I said, you know what? I need a little color and some bright. I'm going to get a pink phone case. And I got this lovely pink phone case, and I loved it until I was taking pictures with it. And the pink, if there's any kind of a reflection like in a shot, it will show up in that reflect. So that's why it has to be a black case from now on.
I have the same problem with this hat. Actually, I don't understand why.
Who are you? He got back in. Lockdown.
I got this on vacation.
That does look like that checks out. That does look like a hat that someone buys on vacation.
For people who are listening, it's I don't know, how would you describe it?
It's a very stylish.
One of the Pope's Swiss guards if he's going clubbing later that night.
It looks like AI designed this. Is what it looks like. It's an AI watermelon. So what do we lose in the 16E? It does have the interesting. It has the action button, doesn't it? But it doesn't have the camera button.
Right. No camera control, but it does have the action
dynamic
button.
Island.
Right? Yeah. No dynamic island. You lost no ultra wideband. No MagSafe.
The charging is lower when it does use Qi charging, but it's only at what, 7 watts or
7.5 watts.
Again, it's very kind of a 6 or 7 year old iPhone in some ways, right? Where they're using kind of the older charging, the pre-MagSafe kind of stuff, and those are places where they are, cutting corners. Honestly, it's cutting costs, or there are specific engineering challenges that they just decided not to bother, fixing because they were trying to cut costs. This is a cut.
No millimeter wave, which is not a big loss,
which is
unless you live in Philadelphia, 3 blocks from the antenna.
And that was almost certainly a cost because it's no longer using Qualcomm's modem chips. Qualcomm basically owns millimeter wave.
Now we get to custom silicon because this is the debut of the C1 modem chip. Apple's been trying to get out from under Qualcomm's chips and licenses for some time.
Yeah, more than a decade, and it's been 6 years since they bought Intel's modem business, but that wasn't the start of it. They actually settled their lawsuits with Qualcomm about 2 months before they bought the modem business from Intel. It's kind of funny, coming up 6 years ago, but they were working on it before then and struggling, and then they decided that they would get an infusion of talent and some intellectual property from Intel, and then, again, almost 6 years pass, and here is the C1. But now that it's here, this is the start of something very interesting because, one of Apple's goals is to control all the key parts of its products. And I would say that if your number one product is a cell phone, then maybe the cellular modem is an important part of that. Yeah. And, it's a first go and we'll see how it goes. But in the long run, this could be potentially interesting because as with all the Apple Silicon chips, Apple gets to design these things as they go, specifically for Apple's software, specifically for Apple's hardware. They know what hardware is going to be used where. That's been the playbook for Apple Silicon. And they're also working on Wi-Fi and Bluetooth chips. So there's a lot that they're trying to integrate of their own stuff here. And that could have benefit. Yeah.
And this wasn't just a middle finger towards Qualcomm. I mean, it would have been justified just because Apple does not want to be under the thumb of Qualcomm. But Johnny Cerrugi had an interview, at least did answer some questions from Reuters that were very interesting. One of them pointing out that because it has the ability, they can design it the way they design all Apple Silicon, i.e. to work for this specific use case, for this specific thing. They can do things like extend battery life by figuring out that, okay, I know what app is trying to use the modem. I can tailor its performance for this particular use case because I know that I don't have to go high gain. I don't have to really blast things through. The user will never know the difference. And also, I know we've had our hearts broken so many damn times, but the idea of integrating the modem chip into the SoC, and essentially the idea of, so maybe there'll be an Apple Silicon like M4 or M5 in a MacBook that will have a modem built in, so we can have a MacBook that has some cellular broadband maybe someday. So yeah, there's a lot of potential there, and a lot of things that will actually help out the user other than battery life.
Are we worried about, or is Apple worried about still having to pay Qualcomm license fees? That's unknown, right, with the new modem.
Well, I mean, they settled, but they do have patent fees.
They have
I mean,
fees,
I like how Andy
yeah.
said it's not just because they hate Qualcomm. I mean, they hate Qualcomm, but that's not just the only reason you do this. It will get them out from under having to buy parts from Qualcomm. Patents do expire, so over time, the cost of paying Qualcomm for stuff is going to be less and less, and presumably they've got their own patents that they picked up from Intel that they're doing as they go here, and so you may end up seeing a kind of an agreement at some point where Apple and Qualcomm agree not to pay each other or something like that. But, but Andy's absolutely right about the benefits here. Now, Johnny Sruji talking about how, oh, well, now we can prioritize because we know what the quality of service, basically, we know what process is most important. I mean, I'm sure Qualcomm has stuff like that too, but this goes to the heart of it, which is Qualcomm, whatever their chip features are for a wide audience, right? It's for everybody who might buy that chip. And maybe if they do some OS-specific integration, it's probably going to be for Android because most of their customers are running Android and not iOS. And so if you're Apple, I'm not convinced that that's not a feature of Qualcomm's chips, but it's probably not the way Apple would do it, the way Apple wants to handle it. And if you're Apple, it's just like when there were Intel Macs. You're just a customer. Even if you're an important customer, you're buying a product off a shelf that is not built for you. It's built for lots of people. And when you bring it in-house, it's only built for you, and it's only for your products and your operating system. And fundamentally, even if Qualcomm is the best in the world at this, which I think they are right now, at least, there is benefit to being Apple and saying, if it's not in our priority list and if our products don't need it, it's not going in our modem because we don't care. And Qualcomm can't do that.
Well, and also almost nobody should do this, by the way, unless you're Apple, unless you have the hardware, the engineering.
Well, Apple even failed at first.
Scale. Yeah,
Apple failed, Intel failed, Apple bought Intel's business, and then 6 years passed, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's hard.
What they're doing is really hard. But I do think that Tim, at some point in one of the earnings calls, mentioned you could hear that they just view everything outside of their own chips as legacy. I think they called it legacy legacy components is what he called it. And so you can tell that they're kind of interested in every chip that they don't make or design that's sitting on the iPhone right now eventually ends up in. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if 5 years from now or 10 years from now, there's just a piece of silicon that is your phone.
Yeah, a package
that just goes in. It's the whole what the phone does every year is just this thing that they completely control.
Unless there's radio interference issues or something, but otherwise, I think absolutely they just want a package that is an Apple package that has your entire device in it,
which is less expensive, more stable. It has all kinds, faster, more efficient, they get all the things out of not having to go back to the board to do things. And there's just nobody. And again, it gives them a place where there's nobody else that can really do that because Apple's, they're the Krupp's arms of phone making, where they
remember though, they don't actually make the chips and they have a problem with TSMC at this point being in Taiwan.
At this point, yeah.
It's funny. I think maybe some of these chips, the Wi-Fi chip and maybe even the cellular chip, will ultimately be on legacy nodes, which is built in Arizona on the large. They don't need it all to be down at 3 nanometers, and then they do the thing where they put it in a package and they build it as so it becomes Alex's single widget, but it's actually coming from different foundries. I mean, we could always say, well, what about TSMC? That's the truth. Is Apple's whole business is really what about China and TSMC?
Yeah.
That's a fundamental thing. But I think to Alex and Andrew's points too, just to reiterate, Apple doesn't necessarily have to beat Qualcomm at its own game. It can, I think, given the track record, you have to say Apple Silicon people are really good and they're probably going to do a good job with this. But even if they're just sort of level with Qualcomm or even a half step behind, because they're building bespoke chips for their own OS and hardware, there are going to be so many benefits that you simply can't get because Qualcomm's not going to make a custom chip for Apple and do exactly what Apple wants because why would they? That doesn't make business sense for them, but Apple can do that.
Yeah, and many times Apple is a step behind a lot of things, but it's the ecosystem that they've built out that all the things working together that make up for that step. And over time, they often catch up. It's one of those things like whether it's maps or other things, they start behind and then you just see them slowly just spend money. They just outspend you all the time to get to that other point.
Do we have any benchmarks yet, or is it? Or
Yeah, Geekbench results have come out. So it does have one fewer CPU,
GPU core, yeah.
GPU. So in graphics intensive stuff, I think it's something like 17%. I've got it in the notes here.
But no cellular benchmarks, I think, yet, right?
Not yet, no.
Yeah.
If all they've done, the benchmarks also confirm like some of the internals.
Well, and they're not
internals that we know
official
about.
benchmarks; those are leaked Geekbench benchmarks, right?
Which
we're
tends to
still
happen.
waiting for. I don't know who does benchmarks anymore. Anon's gone. Tom's Hardware. Do you trust
there
them?
Are some
I don't
of
know.
us. Yeah, there
Somebody,
are a few of us out
will
there.
you do them, please, when they come out? Will you?
I mean, yeah, I'm about to go on vacation, so like, smell you later, everybody. But maybe I'm sure. I mean, running Geekbench isn't hard, and I'll tell you, as somebody who has had pre-release hardware, I don't for this, but I've had pre-release hardware, and I get mad when the Geekbench numbers come out. Just like I was mad last week about Mark Gurman's report about the iPhone 16e, because I got that briefing too, everybody, or no, not that one, the Vision Pro one, and like I knew all those things too, and somebody just talked. Well, it's very maddening when you do all your benchmark work and then somebody just forgets to check the box that says don't upload this to Geekbench, and there it is on Geekbench, because those numbers are generally exactly right. Those are real numbers.
So if I look at Geekbench, those are reliable.
Yeah, but I mean, it is what it is. I mean, the fact is, every A series processor that exists behaves exactly like every other A series processor, and the only difference here is it's down a GPU core from the iPhone 16, so the GPU numbers will be whatever 20%.
But we want to know what the cellular data rates are. That's the real thing.
Yeah, we don't know that. Although Apple talked confidently about it. I mean, I feel it's worth predicting that there will be some sort of a faux scandal about this, because I actually, if I had to do a specific, because everything that Apple does,
remember the real
has a
scandal
gate.
that Apple had to slow down the Qualcomm modem because the Intel modems in some of its phones were so slow that they made the other ones look bad, too good, right?
People were treasure hunting the right iPhone that had the right.
You don't
modem
want
in
the
it.
Intel modem chip.
Whereas,
oh boy!
And that's why it's in the 16e. That's why the C1 is in the 16e, is because it is if it ends up being scandalous that the C1 performance is below the performance of the Qualcomm chips in the higher end iPhones, which may very well be the case. Yeah,
it will be for
exactly.
sure.
What's going to happen is Apple's just going to say, well, yeah, it's buy the more expensive phone if you want faster cellular. And so they can't do this with the mainline iPhone yet, because that would be really scandalous. But for now, it's safe for them to do this. But there will be something like that. And I bet you even Apple already knows what it's going to be, because they made choices in the design process, and they know the profile of their modem. So they're going to know what's weird about it, and somebody will discover it, and there'll be a blog post, and then it'll be like another blog post that copies that blog post. You know how the internet works today. And they'll fix a gate to it, and C1 gate, I don't know, and then we'll all move on, because
the scoop would be if it were as fast as the high end Qualcomm modems.
That would be quite a scoop.
That would be a story.
I think even Johnny Strugi and Mark Gurman in his reporting on this says, the C1's a step behind, but that's okay. The C2 gets close to Qualcomm, and then they're hoping that the C3 will actually be competitive or ahead of Qualcomm, but that's a few years out, right? But it may be. I think it's next fall that he's suggesting, which would probably be a C2, that they would actually put this in the mainline iPhone. The rumor is that thin iPhone we've been talking about might get the C1, but again, it's an outlier.
Here's what Ming-chi Kuo is saying on X. Following Qualcomm, Broadcom's Wi-Fi chips will also be replaced by Apple's in-house chips at a faster pace. My latest industry survey indicates that the new second half 2025 iPhone 17 models, ones coming out this fall, will have Apple in-house Wi-Fi chips versus only the slim iPhone 17, which will have the C1 modem chip.
Right.
So that implies a C2 in the higher end iPhone 17.
No, I think Qualcomm has disclosed that the Apple will still be providing,
it's still going to be
buying
Qualcomm.
a lot of Qualcomm modems this year.
Well,
So
that tells you that the
Qualcomm.
C1 is not as fast, right?
I think so.
I don't know. There was also some reporting, or people who think that the modems in the 16 in the 17 series are going to be MediaTek modems.
Wow.
Don't know
who are they when they're at home, huh?
Yeah, I mean, they could, both things can be true. They can still be using Qualcomm modems for the rest of the iPhone 15 line and the iPhone 16 line. I would not have imagined that, but Yeah, I mean the idea of them moving towards making their own Wi-Fi chips, being slower about rolling out C1 their modem chips throughout the entire line. That says something about their confidence, if this is true, in their Wi-Fi system than in their modem system. I think once these things actually ship, I'm sure we're going to see some a lot of people really hammering them, trying to figure out where its weaknesses are, like what situations can it handle? Are there any bands where yes, it can technically handle it, but it's really not very good at it, or it will absolutely burn through the battery trying to maintain a connection in that state. And that's also not to say that there won't be an update to the firmware, to the OS, that basically fine tunes battery performance, fine tunes modem performance to basically take all that information they get from these first few million beta testers and use it to really lock down what the design of the C1 should have been and what the design of the C2 should be.
We shouldn't ignore the loss of the UWB chip in the 16.
That's a big deal.
Because of home automation. We were talking about this on Jennifer Pattison Twui said, look, there's locks coming along for Apple HomeKit that use UWB.
Yeah.
You won't be able to use those with the 16E.
Right. And a lot of car locks. And of course, AirTag Precision is using UWB, as well as the finding each other using two iPhones that have UWB, where I did that at a football game with my wife, where I was able to find where she was using the UWB. And I was like, okay, she's right down there, 40 feet away, and so, this is the UWB. It's a little thing, but I do think it means that there are lots of asterisks on this phone, right? A lot of well, you can get this, but that one phone doesn't have it. MagSafe is an example where it's like, you could say, oh, the iPhone 16 family has all these accessories, except all the MagSafe ones don't work with the 16E. It's obviously Apple doesn't care. And I think that this is the same attitude about when we talk about Apple Pencil having like too many pencils and too many confusing places and all of that. And Apple would like everything to be crystal clear in its product lines, but if push comes to shove and the alternative is hurting the product margins,
well, I think
messy is fine.
I think it's also that Apple, it's the same, the reason that the CD is 72 minutes long is because someone walked into a Sony executive and they said, how long should the CD be? And he said, I want this Mozart to be Beethoven's fifth. I want that to fit on the CD. And that's how big the CD was. I think and when you look at these things, it could have been twice as long if you picked a longer thing, or twice as short. But I think in this case, you go to the executives and you go, how much, someone in marketing or whatever says, this is the number, it's $5.99 or $6.99 or $4.99 or $8.99.
Yeah.
And everyone sharpens their pencils and they just make decisions about what are the things that we think people make decisions, why
Absolutely.
are they buying it? Why are they buying this product?
It may also explain why it's the 16E, not the SE. Maybe they're thinking we're probably going to update this more than every 4 years.
Every 2 years is my guess, but something like that.
Yeah, I mean that's what Google does with the Pixel phones. That's what Samsung does. That's what even
with their
Nothing phone
A
does.
series Pixel phones. Yeah,
and those
are yearly. Right?
Yeah, exactly. They do the major updates for the Pixel. They do the major updates in now August, but every spring they come out with the A series. As a matter of fact, the Pixel 9a is supposed to be coming out sometime in the next couple of weeks, and it will probably be $499. They only recently changed their prices from $450 to $499. It's going to be the thing is the thing that I don't think the 16E is weird or is a bad phone. It's just that I look at the list of things that have been left off of it, and it really does seem like a phone that they took things off of, as opposed to they designed this to be the anchor phone, the bottom of the chain in a certain line. When you look at the Pixel 9a, when you look at even the Samsung's 24 series, the 2 series phones, they look like they were holistically designed as, we've got X amount of dollars, we got to hit this price point, let's build a holistically well-designed phone. Whereas for the 16E, it does feel like, here are the Legos that we have available. Yeah. So there's going to be a bunch of walls that have some weird red bricks in it. We can't do anything about that.
Yeah,
the fact that they doesn't even have thread support, again, seems like an odd omission, and I wonder if there was an engineering reason why they couldn't do that.
Yeah, or a chip, that there was a cheaper chip. I mean, you're absolutely right. There's a reason this is the 16E and not the 16, is that it's not the the 16 is the base. The 16E is a sub brand below it and beneath it, and that's just what it is now. And they obviously had a price to hit, probably something like, we got to make this phone for $420 of bill of materials, and they, and they're like, well, what about UWB? And they're like, nope, that puts us over the line. It's like that scene in Apollo 13 where they're trying to figure out how to be under the power budget. I mean, and I think it is interesting to know why which ones they chose to throw overboard. Although I don't think we can definitely say it's because they don't care about those things, because it's not just the cost of the part, it's the cost of putting that part in the phone. And they might have said, well, we could put the MagSafe stuff in there, but if we do that, it's got to be aligned in a certain way, and then we're going to have to redesign this other part that we're reusing from some other phone. And they're like, no, don't do it. and sometimes I think that's what goes into this stuff too.
Yeah. Is anybody surprised that they didn't just go with, hey, it's got a great camera, here are the features of the camera? It seemed weird that they have to say, oh, no. You think it seems just because there's only one hole doesn't mean that there aren't two lenses there. It has a magical, mystical telephoto lens built into it. Trust us. And
it's been 2 years they've been saying that same thing, though, right? Because it's that center crop on the 48 megapixel sensor. So yeah, I mean, they're trying to make lemonade, right?
But this phone has one hole. My old phone had two holes, or sometimes even three holes.
But what is a hole inside a hole, but just a hole, Andy?
Can you hold a hole and no hole
about it
in both hands at the same time?
When a hole is not a hole, but a half. Let us take a little break. And we will contemplate that.
Good time. Good time for a break.
Good time to think.
The koan.
And then when we return, the answer or not.
No. Oh no, you're right. Leave him with a cliffhanger, Leo. Leave him with a cliffhanger.
Do not tip the vessel of wisdom, Jason.
You're watching MacBreak Weekly. Andy, Jason, and Alex, the old buddies, unite. Every week, every Tuesday to talk Apple. Our show today brought to you by our good friends at Bitwarden, the trusted leader in passwords, but not just passwords, passkey management. They do such a great job. And secrets. I really want to plug the passkey management because as an individual user, I use passkeys a lot. And at first, of course, I was storing them on my iPhone, which meant when I was somewhere else, I had to go running for my iPhone and make the passkey work, etc. It should ideally be everywhere, right? If you make a passkey, well, with Bitwarden, your passkeys are everywhere Bitwarden is, on your phone, on your desktop, everywhere. And I really like that. With over 10 million users in 180 countries and 50,000 business customers worldwide, Bitwarden's entered the year as the essential security solution for organizations of all sizes. I bet you didn't know that, did you? Maybe you did if you use Bitwarden in your business. Consistently ranked number 1 in user satisfaction by G2. Recognized as a leader in Software Review's data quadrant, Bitwarden continues to protect businesses worldwide. One of the things I love about Bitwarden, because they're open source, they're always getting better. They're always, there's contributions. They're always adding features. For instance, maybe you've been using the Bitwarden app on your iPhone or your Android device. They have now updated it to be native. I didn't know they weren't. I thought they were quite good, but you will notice the difference. The native mobile apps on iOS and Android mean you get faster load times. The functionality is improved. It's, of course, all the widgets and everything are platform specific, so it's a much better user experience. But also you get deeper hardware integration, which means Bitwarden on your iPhone and Android phone now work flawlessly with biometric authentication, multi-device support, and on and on and on. Bitwarden has also strengthened its password manager. I love this. Now, this is something maybe more for business and enterprise and IT departments. I don't know if you use SSH. If you do, the most secure way to use it is not with a password, but with public keys. Well, Bitwarden has updated its password manager with SSH support. This really fixes a critical security problem. 90% of authorized SSH keys in large organizations go unused. This update centralizes, I love this. I used to have a 10-step process to generate a key and then put it on the server and so forth. Now, it's all centralized. Cryptographic key management is in Bitwarden, enabling not only secure storage and import, but generation of SSH keys directly within the Bitwarden vault, which is where you want them, not in your GitHub commits. which happens so often. Enhanced workflows for developers and IT professionals. If you know, you know, right? What sets Bitwarden apart? It prioritizes simplicity. It's easy to set up in your business. In fact, if you're using another password manager, they support importing almost instantly from password management solutions. If you're curious, they are open source. That means you can inspect the code anytime. And of course, they have regular audits from third-party experts, and they publish every word of those audits so you know exactly what's going on. Your business deserves an effective solution for enhanced online security. See for yourself. Get started today with Bitwarden's free trial of a Teams or Enterprise plan. And I always want to emphasize this. If it's free forever for individuals, you can even, as an individual, host your vault if you want, because it's open source, right? Bitwarden.com/twit. If you've got, I know you use a password manager, and I'm glad you do. But if you have friends or family, as I do, as almost everybody does, that don't, tell them about Bitwarden. It's free, pop. Bitwarden.com/twit. BITWARDEN. Bitwarden.com/twit. We thank them so much for their support for MacBreak Weekly. I am a happy Bitwarden user and have been for a couple of years now. Really love it. So is Steve Gibson. We think it's the best. On we go with MacBreak Weekly. There is no answer to the koan. That's the answer. Ha ha!
One hand clapping.
Yes. What is that sound?
It's the sound of the hole in the hole.
So
this is a good show. We're having a good show today.
What? The UK. All right, let's talk about it. You remember that the UK Investigatory Powers Act, aka the Snoopers Charter, had apparently been used. By the way, this is all inside scoop from Bloomberg and others, because it's never revealed, right? It's supposed to be secret. But apparently they sent an order to the folks at Apple saying, you must provide us with keys to people who use advanced data encryption, not only in the UK, but worldwide, which is obviously a bridge too far. We were wondering what Apple's response would be. Apple has announced no more ADP for the UK. Which, by the way, confirms that they must have gotten the note.
Yeah.
Right? I guess the story was true.
It is slightly good news, because if they had complied or been forced to comply, that means that people could have had their data seized basically at the whim of the UK, without being informed that this is what has happened.
And not just people, not just British citizens, but anybody.
No, exactly. But what this means that, although it's a step backwards, because now end-to-end encryption in iCloud backups is no longer an option for anybody in the UK. It does mean that they're back at, if they want to get access to the iCloud data, they have to have a court. They have to do something through the courts. They have to basically show the paperwork to Apple and basically it's no longer a secret that they can't actually talk about or disclose to their users. So if we're looking for something good to say about this, realize that Apple is absolutely happy to do all that. There was another story that I didn't put in the notes because it was a little bit, I don't know. It was just really funny. Someone who a burglary ring who was targeting professional athletes got identified and arrested because they were taking pictures of themselves. Hey, look, we got so and so's jewelry, and basically it was backed up to their iCloud. And after they were suspected, the police said, "Hi, Apple, could we get like their iCloud photos?" Apple said, "Let me see the paperwork." Great, sure, here you go.
Yeah, and that's germane, because it proves, if you ever had any doubts, and we've seen this over and over again, that Apple does have the keys to the iCloud stuff, and they're always subpoenaed.
And they're willing to work with law enforcement. They don't have an antagonistic. The only times they have an antagonistic relationship with the FBI or any other law enforcement is when they do things like what the FBI did a few years ago, or what the UK did, basically saying install a backdoor in your security so that we can access and bypass encryption. At which point your security. At which point Apple says there is no such thing as a backdoor that does not compromise the security of the entire device for everybody. We absolutely will not do that.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's pretty clear that this does not answer the UK's request, because they wanted access to everybody's stuff, not like
worldwide.
Worldwide. It just means that, and they're still doing business in the UK, which means presumably they still, have to respond to UK requests.
This is my question, is what happens next? And we don't know the attitude inside the UK government, right? But I do wonder.
It may be a face-saving point for both,
exactly, right? Like
what
they're doing is saying, okay, what we're going to do is, and they're not, there's been a lot of hype about this where people have been saying, oh God, Apple put in a back door. It's like, no, they used to have the front door open. And then they said you can close it if you want, and now they said in the UK you can't close it, right? Like this is an existing hole that's been used for a long time.
But we've also pointed out that a lot of people, incling everybody on this panel, don't even use it.
Yeah. But
right.
I think you're right about saying, is there a face-saving? This is one of those politics things. Is does this allow the UK to kind of declare victory,
right?
Even though they're not getting everything that's in the law, because the risk is if they push Apple on this and say no, you need a back door. It needs to be everybody worldwide, and if not, you're going to be in violation of our law. They risk a bigger confrontation with Apple, and I know as ludicrous as this is to think about it, but like, I don't know if they win that one. I don't know if Keir Starmer wants to risk having Apple say, how many employees do we have in the UK? And all those people at Battersea and everybody who uses an iPhone and a MacBook in the UK. And how do you feel about being the government that because you're overreaching with your snooping is going to lose Apple for the entire UK? Honestly, if I'm Keir Starmer, I go to whoever has been asking for all this and I say, keep it quiet, shut up, stop doing this. We are at a good status quo. But we live in a weird world where you never know what might happen. But I feel like that is such a broad overreach to say we want all your information everywhere in the world. If they call Apple on that point, I mean, Apple said in this statement that like, we will not make a back door. We will never make a back door, period.
Right. And I think that's going to be interesting. I mean, combined with the promise of $500 billion of investment, whether it was booked earlier or not. I think that some of the pushing that's happened both in the UK and the EU may find larger resistance. I think Apple's positioning itself well to get some air power, like to get everybody off their back. So that I think that on top of what Jason said, I think that they may not want to take this any further anyway. There's no reason to get into a fight that they don't have to with the U.S. government. That is probably not going to look as kindly on this stuff as the last one.
There's already some saber rattling about it, where basically a senator was basically sending a letter as before saying that you're basically demanding access to the private information of Americans. We will not tolerate this. This is a cyber attack. Put this aside with Trump's rattling about how we don't all of your rules to protect quote unquote protect data in the EU and the UK for your citizens are a direct attack on United States technology companies. We will not tolerate that either. This is again, pick your battles. Go back home, regroup, have a tea, go watch Paddington 2, and then come back and decide what you really want and how you can get it.
Jason, Tim Cook addressed this at the shareholders meeting yesterday, yes?
Oh, I don't know about that. I'm not a shareholder. I know that they talked about their DEI stuff, but I didn't see anything about this specifically.
I thought you. Wait a minute.
I mean,
I was giving you a softball question that wasn't such a softball, is it? Somebody quoted. It says Jason Snell. As the legal landscape around this issue evolves, we may need to make some changes to comply. But our North Star of dignity and respect for everyone and our work to end that.
That's about the DEI.
Oh, that's DEI. I thought it was about UK encryption.
And that's from the BBC article.
You know what? It could do double duty. It could do double duty.
They haven't. I think their statement on it
will never waver.
Their statement that they released that said we will not do a backdoor. We never will, I think is how it ends, is the statement that they've made on the matter. And I think that's probably all they'll say. It makes it, as Andy pointed out, a hell of a canary if they ever change that. But I'd say they know what they're getting into when they make a statement like that. And I think that is them saying to the UK government, try us if you want to push this further. And if the U.S. government, the EU as well, like any other government is going to look at this and be like, no, you do not get access to our people's data.
Victory. But it's a victory. It's a victory for the UK. It means you can't use ADP in the UK,
this
so that the
declare
iCloud
victory.
keys are available to every law enforcement agency in the UK.
Right, because
and
of the
thereby the
backup.
Five Eyes.
Right.
So it's not a victory for Apple. It's a victory for the UK. It's Apple caving.
It's the keys that no one's using are now back in,
Well,
At least
you say no one's using it. None of us are, but I would imagine if you are a dissident, if you're a political activist, if you're a politician, if you're a member of the CIA, you use ADP. The sad thing is I was about to turn it on. Now I know it's just going to put a big bright star on my forehead. And maybe it's not next. It's not the UK government. It's the US government who says, good, we'd like Apple to turn off ADP in the US as well.
Yeah.
I think that's inevitable, but yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So this is a victory for the UK, not Apple. This is Apple caving in.
I think it's not. I think it's Apple reverting and trying to pick its battles and trying to, again, letting everybody sort of, I mean, Apple is not declaring victory. Apple's statement is not a positive one. They're grumpy about it. Yeah. But I think that you can overreact to this and say, oh, Apple caved, it's terrible. But like Apple literally said, we're not going to do what the law says in terms of giving a backdoor key to everything that's encrypted. We're not going to do that. We're just going to, put that door back open and not let people in the UK close it. And that is partially a regression. It's true, but I think
Apple's assuming that most people don't know what our listeners now know, which is that Apple has access to everything stored in the iCloud unless you turn ADP on.
Well, it's not everything.
And we'll hand it over.
It's not everything, but it is a selection
not messages,
of things.
right? Messages are still
no, because your messages backup.
They're stored in the clear.
If you do an iCloud backup, your messages are available. And that's the key hole for all of this is iCloud backup, Apple keeps the key so that if you lose your device and you don't know your password, Apple can reset and give you access to your stuff. But as a result, if a law enforcement agent can come to Apple and says, we want that terrorist's phone backup, including their messages, they can get it via their iCloud backup. Now, I should also say for people who are really in, want this to be private and don't want Apple to have it, you can do a computer backup of your phone that is encrypted that you control and Apple doesn't have the key to. But if you want to do a cloud backup on Apple servers, all of that stuff is subpoenaable, basically.
And this chiefly catches those bozos who stole the sport figures watch, Travis Kelce's watch because Travis was on the road. Those guys are morons and they got caught because they posted their selfies in the iCloud. But I think it's widespread misunderstanding that stuff's not encrypted in iCloud and Apple will hand it over.
I mean, if you're doing anything sensitive, you should not be using iCloud. And that's been you shouldn't be putting things in the cloud if you are doing sensitive things, whether that's good or bad or whatever. The amount of data.
Can I turn off iCloud completely on an iPhone? Can I prevent it from uploading to the cloud?
Yeah.
You still need to have an Apple ID, but you don't have to sync to iCloud.
Okay.
Yeah. So
and if you don't sync to iCloud, all the services like passwords. 95 Mac had to compile the reassuring list of here are all the things that Apple does that uses end-to-end encryption, like in apps that aren't affected by this. Things like health data, journal data, messages in iCloud, payment information, maps, stuff like that. So, again, when I say it's not a win on any level, but I do like the fact that instead of law enforcement having their own set of keys to iCloud and being able to walk in, check out whatever they want, not necessarily. Again, we don't because this order was secret. For all we know, they did want a door that they themselves could open and walk in. They wanted a tool for harvesting data. It's not as bad as it's not as bad if they have to again convince a court that yes, we need access to this data. Here are the reasons why, and there's paperwork that basically creates a trail that everybody can then backtrack and follow, as opposed to. We are very concerned about these non-white people who have been hanging out near this place where people are kind of upset about brown people. So we just want to paw through their photos just to make sure they're not taking pictures of switch boxes or whatever. Because things that seemed ridiculous maybe 8 or 9 years ago don't really seem quite so ridiculous
despite
today.
all of Apple's protestations, your stuff is private, et cetera, et cetera.
Well,
Everyone should understand.
But
If
this
you're
has been
using
the
the
case.
iCloud,
we,
it's not.
we,
been the
we,
case
we always must
ever.
comply with the local laws and regulations
Yeah.
of the countries in
Yeah.
which we operate.
Yeah.
Unquote.
They have
And
it on the line
Honestly,
on the phone every
and
time.
the whole for messages and your your messages conversations, the whole is the backup. So if you can't have that advanced privacy protection turned on, if you turn off your phone backup, then your messages are end-to-end encrypted, and
Yeah,
Apple doesn't
because
have to
the
they're
do
on
other
it.
the
person
phone.
does the same thing,
Yeah.
right? Because it's on their
Well, that's the problem.
Well,
yeah.
sure.
Are you communicating with somebody who's using iCloud? Whoops, so never mind.
And this is the problem. And I know I said this a couple weeks ago, but like, okay, so use Signal. But I'm telling you, it feels to me like every government in the world is gradually going to make
That's right.
any large enough company that sticks out as providing an end-to-end encrypted service, it's going to make them not.
You know what we don't know?
Yeah.
We don't know if the United States has sent a similar national security letter to Apple. We don't know if the UK has not sent a similar letter to Signal. We don't know that because that stuff's all intentionally kept secret. So here's the thing. Don't turn on ADP because that's saying, hey, over here. And it's very likely that, I shouldn't have done that. I might put myself out of focus. Hey, over here. No, over here. And furthermore,
That's okay. The facial recognition software from the NSA won't be able to identify you.
if I put
Leo's
the hat
decided to
back
stay
on, does it
slightly
help?
out of
You're already wearing your pattern disruptive shirt.
Well,
so
the
you
hat
can't see.
helped. The hat
They
helped.
can't get your bearing and distance.
So, and furthermore, you need to, if you want privacy, you need to stop putting stuff on the internet.
You need to take control of privacy on your own level, and not simply trust that flicking a switch on a piece of software that came pre-installed on your hardware is going to do it for you.
Yeah,
And it's a little disingenuous to say, well, we've turned it off for the UK, so there, because the UK still has asked for access to people in the US as well.
Right, but again, I think that it's. I don't think Apple's ever claimed that they're protecting your iCloud. That's not been one of the things. When they added this feature, this is when this started to move down the path.
This was their response to what they knew was going to start happening.
Right. What they have always said is, we're not going to give you the keys to the phone. Like, we don't have, we're not breaking into the phone for you. We're not going to build something so you can get in. But that's always been their line. And I think that taking this out is saying, hey, there was a safety belt that the UK actually had a scissors to cut, and we're just going to take away the safety belt, so that you're not like, don't drive more carefully because that safety belt isn't actually there. It could have been cut. And so I think that the thing is that and the problem really is, and the crazy part of this is, it's easy to say. I mean, these intelligence agencies are always like, if we don't have all the data, if something goes wrong, it's not going to be our fault because we did everything we could. But they have so much data. They have so much data about you, and it is so hard. Like, sure, you hide your stuff in Signal or whatever, but they have every phone, every connection that it's made to other phones. They have who you stood by, everyone around you. They have how you were standing when you were standing next to them. If you have two phones in your pocket, one burner and one regular one, they've attached both of them to you. Like, it's not like, as soon as you walk and you move, the accelerometers will tell them exactly there's two people, there's the same person holding two phones. Now both those phones belong together. All of this data is something that that all these intelligence agencies all have now. And what they're talking about is, something that, sure, the photos are good for trials, but when it comes to terrorists, trials aren't nearly as important. So them gathering data, getting the photos is nice, but the data that they're fighting over to get is good for CSAM and it's good for other things like that. But for terrorism, it's not nearly as valuable as all the stuff that they already have, and it's almost impossible to avoid giving to them.
Well, don't carry a cell phone. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
That's problem number one.
I'm like,
what's
I'm
the
never
first?
Gonna carry. It's
what's the
such a
first thing
magical
Jason
device
Bourne
for
does when the scared woman gets in the car? He takes her phone and throws it out the window.
You
Come on,
you gotta pull
man.
the battery out and smash it.
I was watching the Jackal, Day of the Jackal. Throws the phone out the window.
Yeah.
Actually, there was a great show. I can't remember who it was. He was being chased, and he threw the phone onto a truck that was going the other way, so that they would chase the truck. Now that's using the technology. Yeah, that's using it the right way.
Yeah, that was. I saw that, and it was a recent show. I can't think.
It was
of what
the agency or something. I think it was the agency. Great show.
Good.
So just a point, which is, despite UK demands, Apple refuses. No. No. This is all.
But that's not right. No. If Apple had truly caved, what Apple would have done is not said anything.
It's not say anything and give them the key.
Inserted a key that they control in everybody who's got their data protection product.
True.
So that they could read it, because that's what the UK law demands.
More. You're right.
They could have built a whole system to do what the UK wanted. And instead what they did is they turned off a feature for some users that effectively gives the UK what they want in country. For the people who currently have it on, they'll have to turn it off.
Do you think Kash Patel, the new director of the FBI, has not sent a similar request to Apple?
I mean, we'll find out, because I
know he has. I don't know for a fact. Well, I'm pretty sure he has.
The whole advanced data protection thing is the canary, right? Because it's literally a system built where Apple doesn't have the key. It is Apple saying, this is the one part of our entire cloud infrastructure where we have a key. Why don't we make an optional add-on feature where we don't have the key? Because what they're trying to do is forestall laws like this one that say you have to have a key. They're like, or because it used to be, if you have a key, you have to let us see it. And they're like,
not really forestalling it. They're just doing a canary.
So they throw the key out the window like a phone for Jason Bourne, and they're like, no, look, we don't have the key. The problem is, if they make it the law that they have to have the key, what do they do then? And so that's where we are. But so this is, the whole product may be a canary, where if it just starts going dark in various countries.
I think that's probably likely. Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah, that's depressing.
It puts them in a position to be able to tell you without telling you that if they say we've stopped doing it,
you know what else to tell you is if Apple and Google pull a signal from the Play Store, from their stores, which I imagine we're going to see in the next year.
It's possible.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Or Signal removes itself from app stores in countries where it's been made
Meredith
illegal.
Whitaker, their CEO, says they would do that.
Yeah.
I hope she backs it up with action. I mean, why would the UK send this to Apple and not to Google and to Signal and to Microsoft and everybody else? I imagine they did. These things are secret, remember. They're not supposed to be revealed. It's only thanks to some good journalism that we even know that this happened. And you're right, it's a canary, because Apple announced, we're pulling ADP.
And also, another thing that's, if you want cause for optimism, it's not because a reporter just dug and turned this up. It's because some people on the inside were absolutely aghast and angry about this, and that was going to leak for sure. So we can hope that in a country like ours, which is very much noted for very rambunctious citizens, that if something similar were to happen, that it would be leaked out somewhere. But the optimism, conjecture.
It's a good story, interesting story. I hope that you will all take the moral of that story to heart. Let's take a break. More to come in just a bit. You're watching MacBreak Weekly. Andy Ihnatko, Jason Snell, Alex Lindsay. This episode of MacBreak Weekly brought to you by Stash. Saving and investing can feel impossible, but with Stash, it's not just a reality. It's easy. Stash isn't just an investing app. It's a registered investment advisor that combines automated investing with dependable financial strategies to help you reach your goals faster. They'll provide you with personalized advice on what to invest in based on your goals, or if you want to just sit back and watch your money go to work, you can opt into their award-winning expert-managed portfolio that picks stocks for you. Stash has helped millions of Americans reach their financial goals and starts at just $3 per month. Don't let your savings sit around. Make it work harder for you. Go to get.stash.com/MacBreak to see how you can receive $25 toward your first stock purchase and to view important disclosures. That's get.stash.com/MacBreak. Paid non-client endorsement, not representative of all clients, and not a guarantee investment. Advisory services offered by Stash Investments, LLC, and SEC registered investment advisor. Investing involves risk. Offer is subject to T's and C's. Apple has announced, kind of in the same vein, that it is not able to detect Pegasus spyware in one half of phones. I don't understand why it's just half. Explain that to me. Pegasus is the spyware used by nation states for the most part for zero-click attacks on iPhones. In other words, you wouldn't know it's installed. You wouldn't have to do anything explicit to install it. It sends you a message and then they're in. Apple has, of course, tried to thwart this, and in fact, it's even notified people. Maybe you've received it with notifications saying, we have detected. What did it say? It's there are attacks on your phone. We think maybe it's insecure, something like that. I've seen them. It sent warnings to iPhone users in 100 countries last summer. However, a new report from iVerify says that's not 100%. They can only detect it in around half of the devices. Now, this is a little bit self-serving because iVerify sells a $1 app that lets you scan your phone. Is it credible?
I didn't know how to process this one myself because you could cut and paste this and put it on that company's website and it would read like an ad almost. On the one hand, it's they're doing something that's in their own best interest. On the other hand, they would know if they were writing software that can detect this, they would probably be familiar with this sort of stuff.
They say 18,000 people downloaded iVerify Basic. It's $1. And scanned their devices, and they detected 11 new cases of Pegasus in December. The fact that is it just $1 flat fee? That seems like they're not really trying to make a lot of money out of this.
That's another good point.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're being attacked by Pegasus spyware, it's not like someone who's trying to get at your crypto wallet or anything like that. It really is you are the target of a nation state who probably would very much like to silence you one way or another. So that means that the direness and importance of having this warning is in inverse proportion to the number of iPhone users who actually will require this kind of a scan on their phone. But yeah, I mean, if I were on that list, I would definitely be downloading this app after reading this.
Yeah, and it is 99-cent one-time purchase, so it's not like
it's not like
$100 a month or
for
something.
this.
Yeah. So they say, in other words, that we were able to find new infections that Apple did not know about. In half the cases, they said the targets had not received threat notifications from Apple.
Yeah, and it's very explicit. Apple detected that you are being targeted by a mercenary spyware attack that is trying to remotely compromise the iPhone associated with your Apple ID. The attack is likely targeting you specifically because of who you are or what you do. Although it's never possible to achieve absolute certainty when detecting such attacks, Apple has high confidence in this warning. Please take it seriously.
Yikes.
So we're not talking about something that you don't want Apple Intelligence to try to summarize that. It's
I just paid $1 for the app. Let's see if I have Pegasus on here. It does have a notification system. They have a pro app, so maybe that's. But so they're ready to scan. Run a scan that checks device integrity. For the pro app, you'd pay more for continuous monitoring, I guess. But if you at least just want to scan, so it looks like I don't have Pegasus installed. Whoopee!
Oh, there's always tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you have to take this with a grain of salt. This is a company that makes money on this, saying that it's detected more infections than Apple.
Still, it's again, it's like when there's one of those news stories about, hey, my Apple Watch detected AFib and saved my life. It's like all you have to be is one of those 1% of the 1% of the 1% that it actually gives you information that might, again, in this case, save your life. To say, you know what, glad I spent that $1. I'm glad that I came across that news item. I'm glad I listened to MacBreak that day.
Yeah. All right. I guess we should probably talk about Apple's $500 billion promise. That's a lot of money. It's the same amount of money that OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank have promised to spend for their Stargate AI investment. Apple has promised the Trump administration, in the wake of tariff threats, to invest more than $500 billion in the U.S. over the next 4 years. 20,000 jobs will be created, the vast majority focused on R&D, silicon engineering, software development, AI, and machine learning. Probably stuff that Apple would be doing anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what a lot of the financial reporters are basically saying, that after looking at this is basically money that they have either already committed or were definitely going to be spending. Yep. Another analyst looked at this and said that the amount of the rate at which Apple has been spending in the past and their needs for the future, some of these numbers are absolutely insane, and they're kind of doubting. They're basically claiming Hollywood bookkeeping of a sort. That they're obviously putting a lot of money into the economy, and this is another opportunity for Apple to mention how much they pay in taxes and how many people they employ. We are the good $3 trillion tech company that controls everything. We're not one of the bad $1 trillion tech companies that controls everything.
This is PR. This is diplomatic PR. This is more handling of the president.
It's not just. It is the handling of the United States government, and I say that because if you would like, you can call up on Apple's website the press release from January 2018 that says Apple accelerates U.S. investment in job creation, $350 billion contribution. And the press release from 2021, when there was a different president, that was Apple commits $430 billion in U.S. investments over 5 years, including a new North Carolina campus, which, by the way, has not been built yet and is on hold, although they say they're going to build it eventually. And that's the thing is, look, they are managing their relationship with the U.S. government. They want to let whoever's in charge in the U.S. government say, oh, Apple is a good American company that isn't just doing everything overseas. They are spending money in America. And yeah, a lot of this is stuff that they would already be doing, but some of it probably isn't, right?
Sounds like a step up. If they promised Biden $430 billion over 5 years.
Yeah, it's an extra $70 billion.
It's another $70 billion over 4 years.
I think the question is, how has their behavior changed? And I think the answer is they know now that politically they need to spend a little bit more money in the U.S., so they are.
And that's good. That's what the whole point of the tariffs was.
Yeah, but I mean, it is
encourage companies to do it in the U.S.
It is part PR, but I think that some of it is probably we'll build a factory there because now we've calculated that the money we would save building that factory somewhere else is not worth it given the scrutiny that we're under. But a lot of this is just, again, there are a lot of kind of lazy stories that are like, well, of course, this is just sucking up to Trump. And it is, but it's bigger than that because they did this with Biden too. It has to do with the fact that our big American tech companies that stand astride the world like a colossus suddenly became like a target of people in politics who said, we got to regulate those guys. We got to, even though there are big companies, we still got to regulate them because they're big tech and they're bad. And this is Apple's way of saying, oh, no. Look how good we are. And if you look at those press releases, you will see they will list the app economy. They'll talk about independent software developers who are part of the app economy and how much they contribute. So. And they will list states. They'll say, we've got a server farm in Oregon and another one in North Carolina. And we just opened a new campus in Texas. And we got this in Nevada. And I mean, that is like the Apollo program having at least one parts supplier in every single congressional district, right?
That is exactly.
Check.
So here's the paragraph. From the press release, the $500 billion commitment includes Apple's work with thousands of suppliers across all 50 states. Direct employment, Apple Intelligence Infrastructure and data centers, corporate facilities, Apple TV productions in 20 states. Apple remains one of the largest U.S. taxpayers, having paid more than $75 billion in U.S. taxes over the past 5 years, $19 billion in 2024 alone. Yeah. But you know what? I also have to say, good on the U.S. government for putting pressure on Apple to rehome this stuff, right?
I don't. No, This is why I personally, and I'm only speaking for myself here. This is why I find this concerning and galling. That this company, Apple is not going to make any money unless they are investing in their own company, and that also means investing in resources in the United States. And it's also been in their best interests, no matter who would have won the election in January, to get as much manufacturing out of China as possible. Yeah. Mostly, they're putting that in India. Congratulations, they're manufacturing, I think, 25% of the iPhone 16 and 16Es this year and next. But the thing is, they're also adding credibility to the Trump administration. We heard about this first, not from Apple, but from Apple, from Air Force One, Trump basically saying, "Oh yeah, I had a really great meeting with Tim Cook. We're talking about the tariffs. They decided they're going to do this, and because of my guidance, because of whatever." He put a post on Trump's social, on Truth Social, all caps, of course. "Apple has just announced a record $500 billion investment in the United States of America. The reason, faith in what we are doing, without which they wouldn't be investing 10 cents. Thank you, Tim Cook and Apple." Yeah,
that we strong-armed the hell out of them. But either way, I mean, I would rather see Apple spend the money in the U.S. than India.
Well,
now, I know we have listeners in India who might feel otherwise, but hey, speaking as an American, for an American company, why not? It's good.
I'll end this my part.
Unless it's BS, unless it's just wallpaper.
I just think that when you invite an administration to use the company for PR purposes, to basically create credibility where otherwise there might not be much for, or not yet, for tariffs and for whatever strong arming golden age of America stuff that Trump is pushing. I feel as though that means that Tim Cook has to be held responsible partly for co-signing on the policies of that administration.
Well, let me ask you this.
That's all I'm saying.
Is there any negative to Apple investing and moving as much as it can out of China into the United States?
I don't think it's moving out of China into the United States. It's moving out of China into Vietnam and India and Brazil and other places like that. The kind of stuff that they're talking about.
Well, wouldn't it be better if they moved to the U.S.?
It can't. Like, we don't have the capacity to do what we're doing in China. Like, we do not have.
Well, let's make it that. How do we solve that?
That's a 20-year problem. Like, it is not like we won't be
using. Let's not forget
phones
that Biden was doing that. With the CHIPS Act, we're trying to achieve that as well.
It is, but it's a 20-year problem. Like, that's at best 20 years, and we won't even be using these phones. I don't even know what Apple will be doing when you're able to get hundreds of thousands of tech. The tech that's required to do these is hundreds of thousands of people being trained to do something that we've given up on, and so, like, we're trying to do this hard curve. I agree that we need to have more of that skill set, but I don't think that that's really coming back. Like, it's not.
I agree.
It's and it's a very rare. These are in the United States. These are rare skills, and most of those skills actually sit in. From what I understand, most of them sit in the defense industry because that's the stuff that has to be done here. So the Raytheons, the those types have these really, really fine machinists and so on and so forth. But outside of that, most of it is, those are really expensive projects that have, that pay what it takes to have an American work on it. Even then, it's a rare skill, to have those kinds of being able to use those kind of tooling. And so I think that's the challenge, really. I don't think that we should find things that people should be doing here. It's not like we can't invest in people being productive, but I don't think that trying to build phones is going to be one of those. I mean, because the phone will have to cost twice as much. And the amount of training that it would require makes a trip to the moon look like a walk in the park. Like, it is an incredible, it would have to be a near space launch of work. And there's no guarantee that we would win. There's no guarantee that they would pay off. It's just,
well, it's good then we're doing it in Houston, right? They're building a 250,000 square foot server manufacturing facility.
Right.
Wait a minute, Apple doesn't make servers.
They do for private cloud compute. It's their own servers that they're building themselves. And actually, I saw somebody say that's an interesting angle, which is maybe they feel more comfortable making servers. Remember, we had all those rumors and stories that were never really proven about, like, China inserting spy hardware inside of server builds.
Yeah.
Well, you build it yourself in the United States. Maybe you feel better about that too.
Yeah.
And
by the way,
I think Apple's a global company, but it doesn't hurt. I think this might have changed their trajectory a little bit, but I think more this is about optics. That it got to be the point where people were like, "Oh, Apple, all they do is they're not really American. All they do is make their phones in China." And first off, it misses the fact that the vast majority of Apple's engineering is happening in Cupertino. Not even
Apple kind of, Apple admits that there's a problem by saying designed in California.
Well, yeah, but at the same time, I think the perception was Apple's not really an American company. Apple's actually doing everything in China. And so part of the PR here is just to say that's not true, that we have lots of stuff that we do in China. And it's true. And or in California and in the rest of the United States. And that's true too. It's a global company, but but it's fighting against this perception that it has abandoned the United States, and that's not true either. To Alex's point, I think they do a lot in the United States, but there are limits to what they're able to do here since they're completing in a globalized world. Now, if globalization vanishes in the next 20 years, well, everything's going to be real different then. But for now, this is where we are.
And the things that come back to the United States are highly automated. Like that's what you're going to see more of is when these big investments will be in R&D, and it'll be in building things where there's a lot of machines doing those things, doing as much as they can to do it. It's not going to be hiring the same number of people in the United States that are working overseas right now. That's not a viable solution. And so I know that people want it to be, but it just isn't.
Look, here's a picture of an Apple employee getting trained to use advanced EUV equipment.
Everybody's happy.
Yeah, there you go.
I like it that he's American because he's wearing his baseball cap backwards.
Yeah. Are they severed or are those just regular people?
This definitely looks like the severed floor. I don't know. Might just be me. They're both, oh, hey, isn't that great? He's wearing AirPods Max. How many AirPods Max do you think are worn in factories around the world? That's a very expensive headphone for ear protection. Anyway, I love it. These are clearly staged, right? I mean, maybe they aren't. Maybe those are real Apple employees, not actors dressed in black T-shirts. Anyway, and again, I want to support it. I'm not. Everybody knows I'm not the biggest fan of the president right now, but I am in favor of American companies. However, we have to convince them.
Absolutely.
Moving more manufacturing and jobs here. I think that's a good thing for our country. Yes.
Yeah. All I'll say is that I don't like the idea that this is apparently mostly smoke and mirrors. It wasn't.
That's what worries me. It has to be genuine.
We couldn't have done this under Biden, but under Trump, these opportunities, and also, of course, putting a little pressure on us, which the government is, sometimes required to do to make us do the right thing. Essentially, I don't think anything has really changed. But again, once I would be saying the exact same thing. If this were Biden, the Biden White House,
which it was in 2021 when they did this then.
If this were the Kamala Harris White House who was tweeting out, "Hey, we managed to convince Tim Cook to do this," I would be saying, "No, you didn't," and now Tim and Apple is allowing themselves to be exploited to legitimize someone who's trying to put over some very sour beans.
Cook was in the White House.
I will say this press release gets released if Kamala Harris is the president too.
Yeah, of course.
Same press release.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And good on
It
them.
doesn't hurt.
Move it, and maybe don't make it smoke and mirrors. Maybe make some jobs here. Wouldn't that be a good idea?
Apple's made a couple jobs here. It's not like that. They haven't hired anybody in the United States.
No, I agree. I understand.
I believe that they're
this
the
is more like
largest
showing your
taxpayer
work
of the country.
Yeah, for just the 5 things you did last week.
Yeah,
that's
but it's showing your work. It's saying, we are here. Here we are. It's not necessarily like, Donald Trump is going to say, oh, well, I talked to Tim Apple and he said 500 billion. And so I look at me, and he did, in fact, say that. But from Apple's perspective, they're just like, look at us. We continue to invest in America. And they're just kind of like plowing forward. So it's a press release where they're not saying thank you so much to the government. The people, they're letting them take credit if they want to. But this is more like showing their work that, yes, we are a legitimate, American company who invests in America.
Yeah, and speaking of showing their work, at least again for the things I've been saying that might sound nasty against Apple, at least Tim personally and on behalf of Apple, not as a personal statement, has been standing behind the DEI initiatives that Apple has been pushing through. They're not backing down. Other companies are having to, we have to close these offices and we have to change this officer from a DEI officer to a personnel officer. But even during the shareholders vote, the shareholders meeting, which again some group basically put it on the shareholders agenda that we vote for Apple to basically get rid of DEI initiatives. It was voted down by shareholders as everyone thought they would. They said our strength has always come from hiring the very best people and then providing a culture of collaboration, one where people with diverse backgrounds and perspectives come together to innovate and create something magical for our users. We will continue to work together to create a culture of belonging where everyone can do their best work and will remain committed to the values that have always made us who we are. And we've the only stick of butter they gave the Trump administration was basically saying, again, quoting here, "We've never had quotas or targets at Apple. And as the legal landscape around these issues evolves, we may need to make some changes to comply," which is fair. If they basically can't sell anything to the government while still having an actual officer that has the initials DEI in it, it's a loss. I would love to see them fight it absolutely to the last beach, to the last stone, to the last person. But I don't see a huge difference. So long as they are still protecting their people, so long as they're still creating a place of actual diversity and inclusion and safety for everybody. Change the name of a title from DEI to human resource manager prepotentate is a small change. Again, I would love to see them again fight all the way down to the mattresses on this, but I appreciate that if something has been made illegal in the United States of America and they're no longer capable of doing it, that is a much bigger ask than simply saying, no, we're not going to do it, than standing that firm.
And I think that's why he said we'll retain our values, regardless of having to adjust based on laws. We're going to retain our values, and that those are our values. It's funny you mentioned all the companies that just sort of like, oh yeah, let's sweep all that stuff away. It's almost as if those companies never really believed in it. And this is a great opportunity for them to get rid of it. And say what you will about Tim Cook and Apple, I do think they believe it.
Yeah. And that doesn't denigrate the efforts at Google and elsewhere. It's always a long discussion, and the weather, the political and the commercial and the social weather allows the people who are arguing for DEI in 2016, 2015, 2018, 2020 to win the argument and win supporters and to win the day. And sometimes the weather changes and they have to try to get the exact same things done, their same priorities, the same values, without using language that will simply set people off. I hate that this is the reality we live in, but that's the reality we live in. But again, but you're absolutely right. Bravo to Apple for Tim did not have to say anything. This was a stupid the request to cease DEI efforts question that was put on the shareholder ballot. Again, there's a conservative group that's been putting that on shareholder ballots everywhere. They could have just basically saying, okay, you're idiots, we don't have to respond to this at all. The fact that he made a clear statement saying, yeah, we're not going to back down from this. This is a core value that we don't feel is any need to get rid of. That's something they didn't have to do, and the fact they did it, they absolutely should get credit for.
Well, I guess we've covered that story. So let me go back to the story we were talking about. Apparently, Tim Cook was at the White House on Thursday, and according to the president, he told him he was going to stop 2 plants in Mexico and will build products in the U.S. instead. Now, Apple did not announced that. That wasn't in the press release. Is that credible? Is that something Apple was doing anyway? Or is that made up? We don't know.
Doesn't sound like it. There was a fact checker that I read yesterday that basically was trying to figure out what Trump could have been talking about.
Bloomberg says it's not clear what manufacturing facilities Trump was referencing.
They source parts from some companies in Mexico, and that was part of the
Foxconn has a manufacturing presence in Mexico, but it's planning to expand its footprint there. Anyway,
I mean, oftentimes these quotes are not acclimated to reality.
Yeah, it's just made up. Trump told reporters later Friday he and Cook met at length. He's going to start building, Trump said. Very big numbers. You have to speak to him, because I don't remember. I assume they're going to announce it at some point. A representative for Apple did not respond to requests for comment. So I don't know. I mean,
I got to say though, this is how you manage the president of the United States. Is
give him a win.
Tim Cook is he's good at this. He was good at this the last time. He's good at this. He's not going to be perfect, and we're not going to love everything about it. But like, he sees some existential threats for Apple in being perceived as being an enemy of the United States. They don't want to be that. They want to be a good example. Yep. And this is where you say, look at all these things that we're doing. And then when the president just blurts out like, oh, I talked to Tim and it's great, and they're going to do a bunch of great stuff, like, that's not bad for Apple. You may not like it,
and the soft thing is, the next thing is going to be, Tim's having conversations and going, it's crazy that the Europeans are telling us what to do. Like that's a nutty thing, like that's a, and it puts them in a much bigger position to have Trump start to, if we see that, then we see like when we see that 3 or 4 weeks from now, we know this is the seed for the conversation that occurs that next. That would not happen because he'd let them dangle if they didn't make the announcement.
He'll also be at that Houston factory when that first server rolls off the assembly line, right?
Yeah. But that too is an ethical question for Apple. Again, it's a boilerplate, and again, understandable diplomatic language when they're told by China or another country to take all VPN apps off of the App Store. They have to comply with the laws and regulations in the countries they operate in. But when it comes to, we're going to try to use our influence with this administration to use the diplomatic might, the economic might, and maybe even the military might of the United States government to tell the UK and tell the EU that, we're not going to pay any of the fines that you levy against us Apple, for not opening up our app store. We're not going to make changes to our hardware or our software as required by your laws. We are going to ignore all of your laws because we've got a big guy who can basically wave a big stick at you.
I don't know if they're going to ignore them.
That's an ethical issue.
I don't think they're going to ignore them. They're just going to tell them to back off. And the issue is that Spotify and all those companies are using their political engine to create those laws in the first place. They didn't come up with them. The European Union did not come up with these on their own. These are local. These are their companies. Telling them that you have to defend us from those companies. This is all a proxy battle between these companies of where they are, and I think that we probably should be properly jaded in the conversation.
We disagree on this point, and that's all I'll say.
Let's take a break. When we come back, we could talk about severance. That would be fun. I don't know. We'll find something.
I didn't even know
you're
my
watching
job was on the
MacBreak
line.
Weekly.
I swear I sent you that email. Sorry, bad joke.
I got your 5 points. I fed it to AI, and it can't make heads or tails of it. That's the thing that scares me, is the idea that AI could decide who to hire and fire. Isn't that exactly what we were worried about?
I mean, the hiring is already happening, right?
Yeah, that part's
already happening.
AI hiring?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like when you put your resume in, there's AI that's going to look at your resume and make a bunch of decisions. The HR won't see 90 to 95% of the people who apply to a job, because the AI goes through and just sorts out all the things that are not.
Oh yeah, that's an issue, isn't it? Yeah.
So it's already, and people talk about gaming the AI by building your resumes in certain ways. I don't know if it's
really,
or not,
wow.
But it's all making sure you put the things in that it's looking for, that kind of thing.
My name is Poindexter Q. No. People call me Drop Tables.
Little Johnny,
star,
little Johnny Drop Tables. Yeah.
Minus R. Yeah, exactly.
Let's take a little tiny break. Alex Lindsay, Andy Iannacco, Jason Snell, freeze in that position. And we will return momentarily with MacBreak Weekly. Our show brought to you by Zscaler this week, the leader in cloud security. This is a really interesting proposition. I think you probably know, you may even run a company that is defending itself with perimeter defenses, right? Enterprises have spent billions of dollars on firewalls to protect the walls. And then, of course, you have to have VPNs to let people in so they can work. But the breaches haven't stopped all of these billions we've spent on perimeter defenses. 18% year-over-year increase in ransomware attacks. A $75 million record payout in 2024. The problem is that traditional security tools don't prevent bad guys from getting in. They actually give them ways to get in with those VPNs. They expand your attack surface because you have to have public-facing IPs that are exploited by bad actors. And incidentally, they are using AI to generate attacks faster than ever. And then, of course, once a bad guy's inside your network, they've penetrated those perimeter defenses, they're free to wander and look for all the places you back up data, all those embarrassing emails, all of that private customer information, and then they exfiltrate it through the firewall, which struggles to inspect that encrypted traffic at scale. So, basically, you're almost setting them up for success. Hackers are exploiting traditional security infrastructure. And again, they're using AI to outpace your defenses. We've got to do better. It's time to rethink your security. Don't let bad actors win. They're innovating. They're exploiting your defenses. They're taking advantage of what you're doing. No, but now there's Zscaler Zero Trust plus AI. It stops attackers by hiding that attack surface, making apps and IPs invisible. And because, it's zero trust, it eliminates lateral movement. Users can only connect to the specific apps they're explicitly allowed to. And Zscaler continuously verifies every request based on identity and context. It also simplifies security management because it gives you AI-powered automation. That's where the AI comes in. And of course, they have to use AI because Zscaler is analyzing 500 billion daily transactions. They're looking for, most of them are legit, but they're looking for the ones that aren't, so they can give you a heads up about the threats that are incoming. Bottom line, hackers can't attack what they can't see. Protect your organization with Zscaler Zero Trust plus AI. Learn more at zscaler.com/security. We thank them so much for their support of MacBreak Weekly, and you support us when you use that address, zscaler.com/security. All right. Let's move on to less difficult problems here. I don't know what those would be. MacBook Air stocks dwindling, confirming a imminent, according to Mark Gurman, release of an M4 MacBook Air. Yes, yeah, we said last week, March, right? Yeah, that's imminent. We're at the end of the month.
March is itself imminent now. Yeah.
Yes, it comes in like a lion and then sells M4 MacBook Airs.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Nothing more to say. We don't have any better date than that. It could be March 31st,
no, we don't,
right?
Yeah, we don't seem to have any idea exactly when, but it's coming. And this is all the signs point to it, but it makes sense, right?
It's a question about the Air. For Jason, I think you've had both sitting around. Have you tested the mics at all between the two? Because
you're all into these new mics, aren't you?
Yeah.
You love these.
Well, we're looking pretty closely, and it's that there is because what we're looking at right now is we have a problem with Michael Krasny's show of people remotely using their computers, or they're very good writers, very good hosts, very good, but they're not techie.
Yeah.
And even sending mics sometimes is problematic. And so we were like, why don't we just send them a laptop? But in the marketing, of course, it says studio mics for the MacBook Pro, and they say Air for. I mean, in the Air, it's like high quality beamforming or whatever, but it's not the same. Like it doesn't. And I don't know if you've tested that to see,
Oh, this generation, I'm not sure if I have, but I believe the 15-inch Air is a little bit better. It's got some more features than the 13. My guess is that the Pro is going to get you better sound, but it's been a little while.
I'll know later
Pros,
this afternoon.
It is. I mean, I've recorded a couple podcasts with people where it's been very clear that they were on the laptop mic, and it used to be a showstopper. Like, I can't record on the laptop mic. Yep. And in these last couple of MacBook Pro generations, I mean, because Apple started talking about studio quality microphones back with the last Intel MacBook Pro.
Yeah.
And it was like, I'm going to stop you there because I do this for a living and it's not. Yeah. They're like, well, it's kind of like, what does studio mean? Now I feel like it's like The Boy Who Cried Wolf. I feel like they're actually kind of getting there now where you could talk into a laptop and actually sound good.
We had a problem where we had someone with an M3 MacBook Pro that sounded better on the MacBook Pro than they did on the MV7, and the reason for that was they just couldn't find a place to put the MV7 on the desk, right? And so it was too far away and everything else. And then when they turned it off and they started talking to us, I was like, "What are you using right now?" And they're like, "Oh, this is just the mic on the." And that's when the wheels started turning. Of like, it's not a disaster. Like in post, we can fluff up, especially for recording double ending, which is what we do. So with a relatively good record, and because we're sending the laptop out, we can put our own software on and record like AIFF, and like it's not even like compressed, so we get even better.
I'll tell you what,
we can control it.
I'll make you a deal. I will, when the M4 Air comes out, because I don't think I have an M3 here anymore. When the M4 Air comes out, I will do some mic testing just for you, Alex, versus the M4 MacBook Pro. And we will
when are we going to get an M5 MacBook Pro? Is that imminent or fall?
You think?
So this wouldn't be a bad time to buy a MacBook Air M4, yeah?
When it comes out, if you're in the market for an Air, they seem to want to update them every year with the new M chip. Which seems to come every year. There's
a cadence, though, right? Like they're opposite ends of the year or opposite halves of the year.
Sure seems like that. Yeah. That the spring is for the MacBook Air and the fall is for the MacBook Pro. And for now.
And do we see kind of a TikTok where the one version is a bigger jump than the other? I mean, obviously the M1 was a huge jump, but the other ones have been a little more incremental from the, from
it's
the
hard.
M1.
It's hard to say, I think in part because all the drama around the 3-nanometer process where they did the M3, which was a big jump in a lot of ways, but it was also that 3-nanometer process. And then the M4, they were kind of like, it was a smaller jump in a lot of ways, but they were going to a more sustainable process. So it's hard to say. And also varies within the chip models. I believe like the M3, the mid-range chip, the Pro, did not gain as fast as the Max did. They sort of separated those, and so we don't have enough, I would say, to know the pattern because I think the chaos of that 3-nanometer transition they had to do twice has kind of like washed some confusion into it. We're still looking for a pattern there, but it looks like so far what I would say is, don't think of it as monolithic because not only are there multiple chip models, but there's like the multiple parts that are inside that package. And sometimes the GPU cores get faster and other times the CPU cores are what gets faster. And other times it's the neural engine that gets faster or there are more of them. And it looks like basically if you think about Apple's chip, from the outside, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, but it's actually like 10 different things and they push them all forward. They do push them all forward, but maybe at different rates year to year, so it can really vary. I mean,
the problem really is, I think, for Apple eventually with this, and the same problem with the iPad, is that the M1, even though for 90% of the market, the M1 still probably does what it needs to do as fast as it needs to do it. We use M1s for like 8 gig M1s for office hours, and we have up to 8 1080p videos coming out of one computer, and it's just like it's like at 50%, 45%, something like that. Like it's not even pushing hard.
If the MacBook Air M2 that is currently for sale is not the best value you have ever gotten for a Mac, it's that $699 M1 at Walmart. And that's Apple's, I mean, we talked about it here. That's Apple's biggest problem is that the Apple Silicon Macs are so good that you don't really need to replace them because they're so great even now.
And even I think that's still the problem. And I think, again, this comes back to software development and who you engage and so on and so forth. I think I talked about last week, my kids are still using I bought them a Pro, the first Pro iPad at 13 inches. They still use those. Like they're still running and the problem is that almost all iPad software does not push hard enough to move it forward. Like you don't feel any difference between an older. I have my two iPad Pros that I use as interfaces at this point. I mean, I still use them for other things. I pick them up and go take them somewhere, but a lot of times they're sitting here as interface controls. I don't feel like I need to get a new one. I'm kind of like, I don't know. There'll be some feature. Now, what's interesting is that I do feel it on the Vision Pro. Like I can feel the Vision Pro getting pushed. There's some of the hardware, some of the stuff that I am downloading or working with people when they get aggressive about it. I do feel it hitting the ceiling, as far as how hard it can go.
You make me feel that we should have a Vision Pro segment, and yet
can we, Uncle Leo?
Well, okay, let's do it. It's time for the extremely short Vision Pro segment.
What do you see? What do you know? It's time to talk the Vision Pro.
I hope that was sufficiently immersive for you Vision Pro watchers. They did add a new Arctic surfing video. Is it good?
It's okay.
Do you like to surf in the Arctic? Seems cold.
It looks cold. I mean, I think I'm still in the zone of it works really, really well from 5 to 20 feet and doesn't feel that great. It doesn't feel bad, but the wide shots, the high shots, the all the other stuff, I'm kind of like, well, that feels like 2D. Like it doesn't feel like anything. Like I'm like, eh.
Yeah, but
when you get close, you're like, wow.
It's not. What I'm learning now is that when they're doing the wide shots, what works is that it's immersive, right? Like I loved those shots of the snowy Norwegian, bay where those people are surfing, because I was completely just immersed in that scenery. And so there's the travelogue element. Yeah, there's no 3D effect there really to speak of, but it doesn't really matter because it's so immersive. And then, when you get closer in and you're seeing those people, that is a different effect. But I thought that was a good one. I thought that was a great example of, don't watch it when you're feeling a little cold, because it's chilly. They're surfing in the
shot where a woman just comes right out.
water.
She walks out in her bathing suit and walks right into
the water.
Into the water where there's snow, and I was like, "That's not right."
Does it feel colder because it's in a Vision Pro?
No, because the Vision Pro keeps you warm. It's blowing warm air on your forehead the whole time. Did we talk about the rodeo one? Because I just wanted to mention the rodeo one is hilarious, because although it's big rodeo bulls and like it's very exciting, it shows you the limits of Apple doing this, because. And Alex knows what I'm about to say here. He's going to have experienced this undoubtedly, which is they follow a rodeo, a bull rider, and we meet him and his family and all of these things. And it's leading up to the big moment at this rodeo in Utah where he's going to go out there, and he's on the bull for like 0.2 of a second, and he gets thrown, and that's it. And
they picked the wrong guy. In other words,
it shows you that like they're like, it doesn't matter. We're still doing this video. We brought these cameras
I always am
here.
impressed when documentaries pick the person who gets the gold medal. Like, oh, they must have shot everybody, right? And then they took throughout the lot. Yeah.
Like when we did Pixel Core did BattleBots quite a few times, and that's what we did is we picked the top 10.
And shoot them all.
We shot them all.
And then you have a nice documentary. You won't believe it. He was a long shot, but he went all the way.
Yeah, exactly.
And we talked to his mom.
So, I think that the other problem is that it's a little soft. It just didn't feel like the wider shots felt like they were a little soft. Again, when they're really close, it feels really good. But that was the only thing that it's nice that they're putting stuff out. I think a lot of us are really excited to see what happens when people get the camera. That's the big thing. Everyone keeps on talking about the camera.
That's going to be the shift.
Yeah.
Although with that new beta, I guess we haven't talked about this, right? Because there was just the Gurman report, but Gurman didn't get it all. That new spatial gallery that is not in the beta yet, but will be. But it's going to. They've already announced that it's going to be in the Vision OS 2.4 beta. Is interesting because that is a gallery to promote spatial content, not immersive content, and so it's like 3D images, 3D videos. Panoramas, which aren't even 3D, but they are cool in the Vision Pro. And it's basically a curated app run by Apple that will point to content from Apple and elsewhere. And the question is just how much of that is going to be cool 3D content, like videos, and how like they showed a still of Jason Segel on the set of Shrinking, and I'm like, is that your whole content? Is a picture of Jason Segel that's 3D, but like I don't care. And so but what's interesting is they know that those things are cool on the Vision Pro, and it's fascinating to watch over this last year as Apple has tried to sort of like go, oh, people like that, we should make a thing to do that.
Well, I did feel like the spatial was not something they thought was going to be that big of a deal. It was like a little experimentation, but it's definitely paying more.
You can go all the way around Jason Segel. Ooh,
he is quite a lemon drop. Let's just put that out.
It'd be more fun if that was a spatial video behind the scenes, right, where we could watch that. But they're trying, and they updated the guest mode. Seems like it's going to be way better. Again, not in the first beta, where you're going to be able to. It used to be you had to like put it on yourself and put it in guest mode and all that. Now your friend could just put it on in guest mode, and then it slides up on your phone or your iPad. And you can say yes, give them guest mode access, you let them use these apps, and then you can actually even tap and it will do the automatic kind of workflow to push an AirPlay session to your phone or iPad so you can see what they're seeing. Like, and that's clearly customer feedback, right?
I mean, a lot of times I just stopped. It was so complicated, especially when you have a lot of apps. I just want to show you the 6 apps that you should look at. You know,
Exactly.
there's 5 or 6 apps that I want to show, but now I've got 50 or 60 apps on there. I can't okay, now go over one more and then go back to this one, and everything else has been pretty painful. And I just stopped. I was like, okay, it's enough. I can't.
2.4 is going to be a big update. Apple Intelligence.
Yeah.
This is all coming out in April. Apple Intelligence.
Right. First dev beta just dropped last week. Right.
Yeah. Writing tools, image playground, Genmoji. Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, well, I mean,
spatial gallery.
They were behind, right? It was like Apple announced Apple Intelligence, but said no Vision Pro, essentially.
Right.
And now it's like, actually, in this cycle, it is getting Apple Intelligence as well as everything else. Plus, they've done that spatial gallery. Plus, there's a Vision Pro app for the iPhone, which will let you, it'll auto download or auto appear, I guess. If you have a Vision Pro, you can also just add it from the App Store if you want. But it's going to have, marketing stuff in it about here are some things you should get. But you'll also be able to set downloads of media and of apps to go to your device so that they're there when you put it on, which is good. I mean, that's what I use that for the Meta Quest. It's a nice feature to have. And then the improved guest access. So, gradually, my guess is not a few months. Every few months, there are more features that make the Vision Pro better. It's good that they're doing that.
Yeah, my guess is that the spatial gallery will be at least in beta by April 7th.
Yeah,
so I'm going to call that day because that's the first day of NAB, and I think that that's when you're going to want to talk about it with video professionals and talk about that. I'm hoping that they find a better display for some of the spatial video in the sense that that blur thing that they do around the outside edge is not necessary and not desirable, and it kind of ruins the experience. And so I've gotten kind of sensitive to it because Stream Voodoo doesn't do that. So the videos that I send to someone from Stream Voodoo doesn't, they're nice, they're edge to edge, and they look perfectly fine. I'm like, I don't understand what Apple's doing with the soft edge thing, but I don't appreciate it. And I also don't like the fact that the only time I can hear immersive audio is if I put it into immersive mode with that horrible soft edge. The edge doesn't, I don't know how it was designed, and I don't know why it's still there. It's a complete waste of time, and it's a detractor, and you can't do it with any of Apple's tools. You can't watch a video that you shot as big as you'd like it without having that blur on the outside edge, and it's just super annoying.
I was surprised that Spatial Gallery app had to wait had to wait this long to actually appear. I mean, most of the systems, 3D systems that I've used, going back to Cardboard, like they know that one of the things you're going to want to mess around with is I want the 3D experience of enjoying certain content. Here is a very rich app and a very good environment for actually collecting all that stuff and experiencing it. And it just seemed kind of weird that wasn't a priority for the initial release.
Yeah.
Well, I think that some of it is because they're putting up other people's stuff. So with Apple, sometimes the issue is when it comes to spatial gallery. I mean, because you have a spatial gallery in your that comes with it, which is photos, right? But for other people's spatial gallery, I think that Apple gets into permissions and privacy and figuring out what it is and how are we going to control it and what is it going to look like, and all that stuff. I think takes Apple specifically a very long time to figure out the ins and outs of privacy, appropriateness, safety procedures, all security, all those things become a thing. I will say, as someone who's been taking panoramas with their phone and owns a couple Thetas, that all that history has paid off.
Yep.
Because when I open up photos, I've got 800 images that I already can just sit there and jump into.
Yeah. And they're 2D, but they're spectacular. So I'm glad they put them in the gallery.
I can't wait until, when you look at the conversion, it's not perfect, but the conversion on many of those where you just now press down on a image and say, I want that image to be spatial. Their conversion of 2D to 3D, it's spectacular.
Great. It really is. Portrait mode finally paying off for them because they're using, I think, the same technology for that. Yeah, it's Vision Pro right now is a combination of them struggling to, they're not the most high priority platform, so it's some stuff just is slower or late to arrive, like Apple Intelligence. And then also you just distinctly get the sense that they are coming out from under a whole bunch of dogma that was put on them by people early in the process about it's got to have this and it's got to have this. I was reminded of this because there was another, I forget where it was now, but it was another quote from, I think, Johnny Ive or one of his people where they were talking again about how fundamentally we didn't want I was offended by VR headsets, and we didn't want to cut people off, and it led them down this whole path of having those cameras on the inside and generating 3D eyes that go on the outside and all of that. And there are other features like that in the Vision Pro that I do think the people who are on the team now know exactly what this product is, but I think they're still kind of digging out from initial assumptions in the building of the product back before it shipped that aren't right. And those people probably knew weren't right, but they were baked in and they're kind of like chipping away at some of that stuff.
I think but I also think that they're finding this is why they had to build the headset was that they're finding what works rather than there's a certain amount that you can, in the lab, you can say, this is how people are going to use it. And then they use it in a different way. Like one of the reasons that I really got into ambisonic recording was because it really makes a difference in the headset. Like when I'm watching something, I really want to hear, I find myself wanting to hear air around me, where I hear a little bit of the environment. And it did not occur to me that was going to be as important as it has become for me. And I wouldn't know that if I hadn't been shooting and recording and putting it together to figure it out.
Anything else?
I just said in our Discord, Leo enjoys this segment very much. It's restful. It's peaceful.
Anything else you want to talk about?
I enjoy the dancing.
It's just a good, I mean, to wrap it up, it's nice that there's another beta with more features in Vision Pro because it needs them, right? It's obviously the whole complaint about it. I think the number one complaint, other than the price, is does Apple care? And they're moving not necessarily as fast as we would like, but they keep moving. Like there's always more Vision Pro stuff, and it continues. Again, and we'll see what happens at WWDC. But it's good stuff that they're working on now.
I'll just say that I just want them to do a image playground that can create 3D images or 3D objects that you can then just basically play with and say, oh, give him a hat. Like, okay, now I want him holding a golf club.
Yeah. We should say, I mean, that's actually one of those good points, which is the Apple Intelligence that's in there is just the 2D Apple Intelligence from all the other Apple devices. It's not like they're like, aha, now Image Playground has depth. I mean, it should, but it doesn't. And that's just because they imported the existing iPad Apple Intelligence.
The other thing, though, to look at
new 3D generation app that Anthony Nielsen talked me into buying this morning, Pika. This took the still of me in the hat and made it a video. So, and it's almost 3D. None of this is a still. This is not. And
the 3D stuff's coming. There's a program called, I think, Shapey or Shapely that you can give it a text prompt and it'll give you a 3D model. Or what I do is I'll have Midjourney render an object over a plain white background and then take it into Shape. I think it's Shapey or Shapely. I take it into there. And I tell it to make that an object, and it will make it. If I make a character, I say make that object running, and it'll be running. So the 3D, and it comes out as like an FBX. I mean, I could take it into Unreal Engine. Those tools are coming. They're obviously much more complicated, but when you look at a lot of what AI is generating, it has a 3D space. Like it's generated, it doesn't know that it's in a 3D space, but it is a 3D space. It's building 3D objects with geometry, and Apple's is way more simplified and much more like it feels like we're only a small step from them taking those simplified objects that they use for Genmoji and the playground and turning those into 3D. So I don't think it's that far away for Apple to do that. I wouldn't even be surprised if we saw that at WWDC.
Feels like such a dead-end technology to me, but that's just
be fun to watch.
And that's the Vision Pro segment.
Now you see, now you know, we're done talking the Vision Pro.
Yeah, Zazu Pits. What else?
Deep cut.
Yeah,
excellent.
no kidding.
I approve. Turner Classic Movies is in the house.
Apple is going to enhance its intelligence with Gemini. It already has ChatGPT. And now, apparently, according to Apple Insider, Gemini is on its way. That's the Google AI.
Yeah, so smart to cover all the bases. People have their favorites, and there's no front runner right now for esoteric reasons, or because I can't subscribe to 4 $20 a month AI services. This is just the one that I chose to subscribe to.
Looks like this comes from somebody named Aaron Paris, who is a code sleuth who dug this up, and then 9 to 5 Mac reported on it.
Oh yeah,
and it's basically
this is the third generation version.
I love it.
Apologize.
You know me, Leo. I like to go back to the source.
No, I do too. I'm with you 100%.
So this is they have a thing that's like a text.
Isn't this funny? Aaron
picker.
works for Mac Rumors. So Mac Rumors to 9 to 5 to Apple Insider. Okay.
Keep peeling the onion.
So this is basically a configuration file that says, yes, we are going to get you to choose. This is the worst kept secret in some ways, because literally at WWDC,
Apple said it was going to do it. Yeah.
Apple, well, they didn't, but it was that thing where they were like, ChatGPT. And then later they said, oh, of course, in the future it will work with others, like maybe Gemini, who knows? It's like to name one of them instead of just say, who knows who it'll be. Like to say, for example, Google Gemini. To name it is very unusual for Apple, and I think that was the wink, right? Like, we told ChatGPT they would go first, but who knows what might wink follow in the future?
What could happen?
Like Google Gemini. Yeah, it makes sense.
The shadow knows.
Giving people choice, and I would say it benefits Apple to say, you know what? These various world knowledge text bots are commodities almost. Like, pick your poison. We don't care. We'll integrate with all of them. I think that's a good thing for Apple to do too, right? Like, good for customers, good for Apple.
Yeah,
they can't own AI at this point. They can't even make a play towards laying the groundwork for owning AI. You may as well make the iPhone the most AI compliant Catholic device out there. Yeah. Just like, with Apple earlier on said, we're not going to basically own Wi-Fi networks. We're just going to make hardware that is the most easy to use with Wi-Fi everywhere. So, yeah.
Well, and I think that, again, I think that early days, all these external services are 90% of the solution. If Apple is successful, 5 years from now, they're 10% of the solution. And Apple has to figure out that's a gradient that Apple can choose to do. But the good news is that once it's really working well, they can go at the pace that they want to.
Yeah. Speaking of things that were dug out by looking at the code, 9 to 5 Mac was looking at the code for the Developer 1 beta of 18.4 and saw that the list of device categories, iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, Reality, HomePods, whatever. Now there's a new type of device in that list called Home. That these things were yet another piece of suggestion that we are going to see a friendly home Herbie type robot that listens to you when you're sad,
or a square iPad screen. One of those.
Square iPad screen. Yeah,
one of those.
Innovation is on a gradient.
Didn't Gurman say that it actually is going to require 18.4, and so they have to get 18.4 to across the finish line before they can ship the product? So that would make Home. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's just Apple Home. Maybe that's what it's called. I don't know.
I mean, and I think that Apple, I do think that the cameras and everything else make a lot of sense, especially cameras, because you're sitting there, like, you can kind of try to integrate with them, but Apple building, they know a lot about cameras. So being able to build something you feel is totally tied into the network, I think might make sense.
Yeah. Face ID in a mobile form or in a household form would be very interesting.
There's a lot that they could do. Like they could, much more accurate Face ID to just walk up and open your door, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Steve Jobs would have been sad to say 70 years old a couple of days ago. His birthday's on the 24th. Oh, so yesterday, yeah. 70. Didn't make it. Died at, 51?
56.
56, okay. Steve Jobs Archive has published a new footage of I guess this isn't that new. This came out in July of last year. So where is the new thing that
there's a couple of things. California has nominated Steve Jobs there's a new series of $1 coins from the US Mint, and California wants Steve Jobs to be the face of the American Innovation Coin. So in general circulation, the governor has a nice little post about how the nomination or how that's what he wants to do. No knowledge about what the design would be, but I hope they don't use the book cover photo because it's kind of played out. Also, it's one of the least humanistic photos of Steve that are out there. There are a lot of photos of Steve that are just charming as hell, where you see the light in his eyes, not the laser beams from his eyes. And the biography photo was a little bit laser beamy.
They published on the occasion of his 70th birthday an internal Apple employee communications meeting held in 2007, which the archive, which is at stevejobsarchive.com, says was the first use of "make something wonderful." I'll leave this to you to watch the whole thing, but I think that's pretty cool that they posted that video from an internal company. For some reason, I can't play it back. It must be my own machine, but worth seeing. Steve Jobs archive.
And Tim Cook posted something nice on Twitter.
Of course,
a very nice photo, a portrait of Steve. Steve saw the world not just as it was, but as it could be. His vision continues to inspire us to push boundaries and create the future. Today, on his 70th birthday, we honor his legacy and his enduring impact.
Oh,
nicely done.
Oh, that's really sweet. Let me pull up that photo. Yeah, it's a nice photo. That's probably in the same photo shoot that the Walter Isaacson cover came from. Looks like it. Yeah.
Again, warmth and light as opposed to laser beams. He could do both.
They just turn down the key light. That's all. Turn it up and you get laser beams. I think that's enough for today. Let's get to I should mention that Automatic has re-released Beeper, now combining text.com. So all of its messaging, Beeper, remember, was the app that was trying to put Apple messages on Android, thwarted by Apple some years ago. Automatic, the company behind WordPress, bought them in 2023. And I guess they now have a new version of their messaging app renamed Beeper. It used to be text.com. And I guess Messages is in there. I'm not sure how that works. I'll have to download it and see. You may have to have a Mac running it or something like that. It's in iOS test flight, or there is a desktop version as well. The new Beeper, Mac OS, iPhone, iPad. There's an Intel version. There's also Android, Windows, Chrome OS, and Linux versions. That's probably who it's mostly useful for, is people running those horrible other operating systems, not running a Mac. We're going to take a little break. When we come back, your picks of the week, gentlemen. And I have one, thanks to John Syracuse, actually.
Yes, I knew someone would take it. I was leaving.
Yeah,
I thought for sure Jason would have it.
Well, I should let
Leo
Jason
beat
have
me.
it.
Leo beat me.
I should let you have it because he is your buddy. I don't know the man.
I have used it.
I'm using it right now. I'm using it as I speak. But we'll talk about that in a moment. I just want to remind everybody that this show is on the air thanks to the generous support of our Club Twit members, and to invite you to join the club. We really appreciate the folks who have, because it makes a big difference in our bottom line. We are ad supported, and it's wonderful. Advertisers cover about 95% of our costs. You guys cover the other 5%. And honestly, if it weren't for you, we'd have to make it up somewhere else. We've closed our studio. We laid off people. We cut shows. We're right down to the bone. I don't know where else we would cut. So thank goodness for the club. And incidentally, we're not asking you for a handout. We give you some value for your $7 a month. Yeah, that's all it is. $7 a month. You, of course, because you're a supporter, you get ad-free versions of all the shows. You get additional shows we don't do anywhere else. For instance, Stacy's Book Club, coming up on a Thursday. We stream that live thanks to the club members, but after the fact, you have to go to the Club Twit Plus feed. We will be talking about Micaiah Johnson's sci-fi thriller, Those Beyond the Wall. You also can watch our photo time coming up March 6th. Chris Marquardt. Again, the assignment is the word bold. Micah's Crafting Corner. Plus a lot of other things that go on in the club, including our fabulous Club Twit Discord, which is a great hang, not just when the shows are on, but all the time. We quite enjoy our club, and I think you will too. Find out more at twit.tv/clubtwit. And thanks in advance. I'd love to see you in the Discord. I will do my pick of the week just because I have been running it. Jason, you want to explain John Syracuse?
Sure. John Syracuse of the Accidental Tech Podcast, and of course he used to write the giant book-length reviews of Mac OS X for the first decade plus of Mac OS X's run. He was a web developer for many, many, many years, quit his job because podcasting let him do that, which is kind of amazing.
Woohoo!
And now he has released several esoteric Mac apps, the latest of which I think is his biggest chance to be a crowd pleaser. It's called Hyperspace. And what it does, and believe it or not, it does this. This is not just hype. It is actually true. It finds duplicate files on your Mac's hard drive and removes the duplicates while leaving them in place.
To understand how this works, you have to understand how APFS and other modern file systems work.
Right,
There's something called a soft link and a hard link. A soft link is an alias. We all know about aliases, and you wouldn't save any space deleting aliases. But hard links are links are to the inode to when you do, and this is what you get, by the way, when you say duplicate the file
in the Finder. It duplicates instantly, even if it's a giant file, because all
it's not copying the file data all the way over.
Right.
It's making a link back to the inode.
Right. It used to be in file systems on the Mac that it would just make a full duplicate and write that to disk, and now it doesn't. It knows it's on disk, and you can have multiple pointers at the same data. And what I believe it's called copy on write. So the idea there is if you've got a giant picture that you're going to open in Photoshop, and you've got two copies of them, and they're using one, let's say, I don't know, 100 megabytes of data, and you open this picture, 100 megabytes. It could be much larger than that, but let's say it's a small picture. And then you edit it, and then you save it. When you save it, that is now using new data because it can't double up the data. But initially, it's only using it in one place. Now, the problem is that sometimes you'll get files on your disk that have come in from different paths, but they're the same file. And they are taking up 2x, 3x, 5x. Sometimes there are shockingly a large number of duplicates on your drive.
I have on my home directory on this MacBook 3,000 of these.
Yeah. I'll
97
tell you, Leo,
gigabytes worth.
I know where a lot of them are, and a lot of listeners may find this too, is I found that a lot of mine came from zip archives from like GitHub projects or other projects like that, where the zip archive doesn't have the ability to do this. They've got different directory trees with the same files in them. And anyway, what Hyperspace does is it scans your files, it finds the duplicates, and what it does is, rather than letting them all take up space, they all share, it converts them so that they all share one
single
file
inode
of space.
Yeah.
And so if you've got 1,000 1K files, you will then have, instead of 1,000K, you'll have 1K or meg or gig or whatever it is, because they can all share that same space. And it doesn't, from the outside, it looks no different. If you edit the file, nothing bad happens. It will just update it, and then that will be using its own space. But there's a lot, and Leo just found it, and I found it on my system too, a lot of completely unnecessary duplication. And if you want to say,
where's this coming from? This is a mistake in the way Apple's handling these files?
No, I think it's downloads. I think a lot of this comes from downloads and installs that are inefficient, because
but for a long time I've been downloading to the temp folder where it gets erased periodically for that very reason.
No, that's not bad. Yeah, I had like a keyboard driver, and what it did was it installed all the different supported drivers in their own directories.
Can I see what files it's going to?
Yeah, there's a view item after you scan, and you can view them one by one. I think I have to
purchase it to do that.
No, I think, I guess.
I haven't purchased it.
Yeah, you should be able to. Yeah, so maybe it's not going to let you view them until you purchase it. So it's got an interesting business model. You can just make a one-time purchase for an amount of time if you want to solve this once and then forget about it, or you can subscribe if you want to keep it forever. But I think a lot of people will probably say, I'll buy it for a month and run it, and then I won't worry about it anymore, because it sort of solves your problem. But if you're, you might be surprised at how much space you might save. And it's very clever that he lets you scan it, so you know how much space you might save.
Nice job,
Your drive's got to have APFS. So if you've got a RAID or something, like I have a big server with a RAID, and it's running HFS Plus, and it won't work with that. It's got to be APFS. Right.
Right. Can I also say that if you've ever met, John Siracusa, it is such a John Siracusa app, because he knows that the trick that's performing is somewhat technical and will probably not be familiar to people who just want to free up some space. So there are buttons you can press that will just give pages and pages of signature John Siracusa, highly technical, but highly readable and understandable explanations.
Absolutely,
of what it's doing. Because he's human enough to know that people are going to worry about, is it actually going to be like deleting files that it thinks are duplicates but are not. on and on. It's like, no, I want to reassure. I want to make sure I know what people might be thinking. I know what might scare them. I want to reassure them, and I also want to educate them, which is 40% of what I love about John Siracusa.
Only 40%. Okay.
There are a lot of things to love about John Siracusa.
He has some settings that you can say, I don't want you to do it with these file types. If you're a photographer, maybe you don't want to do that, and so forth. But you do have to pay for reclamation. $10 a month, $19 a year, $50 for a lifetime. A lifetime of enjoyment. So thank you, Jason, for making it easy for me to do my pick of the week.
I'm happy to assist.
Supplement.
Somewhat.
I forced to go to an alternate. What is your alternate?
It's called Framus. It just came out. It's also on the Mac App Store. It is a screenshot utility. It will take your screenshots from devices and frame them. So like if you have an iPhone screenshot, it will put an iPhone around it. There are other utilities that do this. What I really like about Framus, it's Mac only, but it's drag and drop, and it's pretty seamless.
That's nice.
And although there are some other, there's some other apps out there that are good and that are coming along as well. This one has gotten faster to the holy grail, which is if I have 3 shots of an iPhone that I want to run horizontally across in a single image, I can drag 3 screenshots in. And it makes an image with 3 of them. You can adjust how far apart the iPhones are. It's iPhone, Mac, iPad, Apple Watch, any device. It will put a frame around it. So instead of just a bare screenshot, it's that screen on the device it's running on. And of course, it's got generic frames, and then you can also pay, and then you get specific frames. So you can say, I want this to be on a gold iPhone 16 Pro Max, and it'll do it, and then you can just output those images and use them everywhere. And I know this is sort of esoteric, but if you're a developer or a journalist or anybody else who is posting these kind of screenshots, it looks so much nicer to put it in the context of the device instead of it just being a bare screenshot. And Framus, it's got, it's pretty bare bones, but the fact that it can build multi-device screenshots right out of the box, man, that's what I want, because, iPhones are tall. If I write about iPhone software, I kind of want to put 2 or 3 iPhones across so that I can have it be wide and fit on my website better. So, yeah, Framus is, it's brand new.
It's infamous.
I don't know how many people need it, but I just bought it.
Yeah, I thought it too.
Anybody who knows what the pain of, I agree. I put frames around all kinds of things, but I've got all these weird ways of doing it. So I was like, somebody just does that? Oh my God.
It supports shortcuts, which means you can automate the heck out of this thing too, and use keyboard shortcuts or just a Finder shortcut to say, take these and build me a screenshot, and it'll just do it.
Yeah.
There are some other great utilities out there. There's a ShareShot that does this across iPhone, iPad, and Mac, but it doesn't do multiple images yet, and that's where Framus really because it's a Mac first, it's drag and drop. So you literally just drag them in and see them in place. And it's really well done. So this is from the guy who did, I want to say Dark Noise.
Mm-hmm. Dark Noise LLC. You're right.
This is his new app, and it's really nice. So Alex and I have bought it.
What I like, and this is, it includes the John's app as well. These are little utilities that, you could probably write up and make, and people are just making them, and they have a place to sell them, which I think is great. That's what the App Store allows, right?
I think what I really like are apps that just do the thing. They do the one thing. They're not a bunch of things. They do this one thing. They do it really well. It costs $3.99, or in this case $20, but for the kind of, I think it has to be more because there's not as many of us that would need it.
Right.
So we're a more vertical market. For the people that need it, it's immediately like, yeah, take my money, and for everyone else, they'd be like, if you're going, well, it may not be the right one, but as soon as you have to do a presentation or an article or a video.
An app like Syracuse's too, like that is deep down file system stuff. And it's in the Mac App Store. I think that's kind of impressive. I when he started talking about it, I thought there's no way this is going to get approved. There's no way it doesn't violate some. And the only limitation is that it won't scan things it won't remove duplicates from files that don't belong to your user. You have to be the owner of those files.
Well, that
so
makes
there are
sense.
some,
That's
and
that's a
he's
reasonable
walled off some
limitation.
like system files and stuff where he's like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to break your system, not even accidentally. I'm not going to do it. But still, it's in the Mac App Store, and it's doing all this.
So I
hinky
paid the
stuff on
$10
disk.
for the 1 month thing, so I can run around to all my Macs and do it. And a lot of this is media. For me, is media files, it's book files.
Well, those are going to be big files too. So.
Yeah, that's why it's 91 gigabytes.
And then the dupes just are gone, and you get 91 gigabytes back. Pretty.
Yeah. Let's hope you're right, because I am about to delete a lot of stuff.
Do it. he was in beta a long time. For the longest time, it wouldn't do anything. You get to the end and it'd be like, nope, not yet. And then he pushed a beta version that would let you remove one. It's like, you just get one. You just get one.
Yeah.
Try it out. But everybody seems to have had a good experience within the beta, and now it's out.
Yeah. Dan Stutters in our YouTube says it also shows the power of Xcode. And I think that's true. You've got a free development environment, or relatively inexpensive development environment, plus a really good way to, you don't have to package it, put it in a box, get Ingram to carry it. You just put it on the App Store.
And this was
that really empowers stuff.
This was for John, and it's in his blog post. He says it's the first app that he's done entirely using the Swift UI development cycle.
Nice.
He's used Swift and Swift UI before, but this is entirely using the Swift UI approach.
Good.
And that's also, it's fun for John, but it's also really interesting that he got to step through that.
Love it. Love it. And so there's two. Let's see. Alex Lindsay, what do you got?
So I'm both ahead and behind in this whole like transition, which is what we call 2110. And for those this is going to be a geeky recommendation, is to take a look at this. I started testing this hardware, and I think that, I've been like, I don't know if I want to get into this. And now I'm getting pretty close. So I have some test units from Blackmagic right now that I've been playing with. I got to send them back sometime soon. But I'm going to probably end up, this is what happens is they send them to me,
and then you
them,
buy them.
And then I'm
like,
can I buy this one?
They're not
No, you can
fools.
send this one back. You can buy one from the store. So that's always what happens for me. So anyway, it's a router like we had before. And now, Leo, you've had big routers and you had 40 by 40 routers. This is actually, it has just Ethernet in the back.
It's a tiny little router.
It's a tiny little rack, but it's 48 in and 48 out.
But it only has 16 Ethernet ports.
Right.
How do it work?
10 gigs, 3 gigs each. So for 3G. So here's the converter.
So you need two boxes.
Well, it depends on, what's happening is a lot of the cameras and all their stuff is going to be supporting 2110. So eventually you don't need any converters. But if you have old SDI stuff, basically this is 3 in and 3 out. So this is 3 signals in, 3 signals out, and it just turns into Ethernet. So imagine being able to, and what's happening now is they're building the cameras with just Ethernet.
So you need one of these boxes for each camera.
For 3 cameras.
For each 3 cameras, I mean. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
3 in, 3 out.
Okay.
But eventually the
just
cameras
trying to add up the bill here. I'm sorry.
Right. Now, but the thing is this is 3
How
and
many
3 out.
Alexes is this?
Well, so you plug 3 cameras in here, right? And this is $595. The big thing is that switch that I just showed you is like $2,700. It's like a quarter or less of what any other switch in the industry. This is what's been holding this technology up.
Wow.
Was because the switch was expensive. Like how do you manage all 360 gig backplane, and so we had to do some stuff where I have to send 3 signals. It turned out to be 3. I was just lucky that 3 signals hundreds of feet away. And then have them pop out on the other end as SDI. And so I started testing these, and then I was like, hey, if you got one of those switches around, why don't you send one of those over too? And so, because we were just doing a point to point, because I can just plug these in, connect them directly to each other and let them talk to each other. But but you just, I now, I've been very, very slow to give up SDI, oh, this is like my warm blanket of when you plug it in, it works. And I'm seeing this, and I think that we're going to suddenly see more and more of this. Like, I just got an Ethernet, and NDI has been around for a long time, but NDI is a little squirrely. It's doing a lot of things on the network. It's talking a lot. This is what they're building new trucks with. This kind of technology, and Blackmagic is kind of making it more available. And so, testing this, I think I was just like, oh, I could just have a bunch of these in 16, Ethernet cables, but it's Ethernet. Like, we're not terminating SDI. We're not, like it's just Ethernet. It's just 10 gig Ethernet that you're plugging into these ports.
That's wild.
And you can take those, and they have got these big 100 gig. They have 100 gig connections so that you can connect them to each other. And anybody who's ever had to connect multiple routers, what happens is you take some of your ins and some of your outs, and there's this weird trade-off that you have to do that's really ugly. And this is going to be a lot more seamless. So it's worth it for those of you who are in production who are watching this. 2110, I think it's been around. It's not like it's brand new, but I think it's very much becoming. This switch only started shipping a couple weeks ago, I think, maybe a couple months ago. Like, it's pretty new.
Nice.
And it was what we were all waiting for. Like, it doesn't matter whether we have all the other pieces if we don't have that. And you can get little single ones that are much less expensive that are just like one SDI, so you could attach it to each camera, kind of thing. This is just what
you can get a single. Okay.
Yeah. And then you can get HDMI. So you have Ethernet, you put a little Ethernet to 2110 to HDMI, you plug it onto the back of your monitor, and you just plug an Ethernet into it, and then it's HDMI from that router to your monitor or to whatever else you want to put it in. So it just means that everything becomes Ethernet. And it's not just that. This means that 2110 brings all kinds of new audio tools and video, because these are all now just data. Like, it's
so
no
2110 is a standard?
Yeah, it's a SMPTE standard. Now,
it's a SMPTE standard for Ethernet video. No.
Yeah, IP-based video. Yeah.
IP-based video. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't have to be Ethernet, but it's
IP. I understand.
IP-based.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and we've talked about it as being the future of some of this for quite some time. But I think this is the first time I've really sat down and gone, okay, could I actually use this and start plugging stuff in and moving stuff around? And now I just look at my copper going, oh, like my SDI, and I was like,
I don't need no. Yeah, if we were building a new studio, we would clearly not use SDI.
But I would have said 2 months ago, if you're building a new studio, to use SDI.
Now you use
I would not. Like, I would
or whatever. Yeah.
But it's been literally. That's why I was excited about it. It's just that it's happened.
So with Dante, you've got IP audio, and with 2110, you've got IP video.
And technically, 2110 can carry audio as well. But Dante is the way that the big thing about Dante is it just works. Like, it across a network, it works. And technically, also Dante does video as well. So it's very complicated. No, but the
does it do 2110 though?
It doesn't. No, it's their own thing. So the and then of course you got NDI and everything else. And NDI has been very convenient. A lot of people have used it. TriCasters use a lot of that, and so on and so forth. But it's one of those things that if you're not a network engineer and you get yourself into NDI, this is kind of setting this up like you don't have to be a network engineer to understand how to get your cameras to talk to each other. And so that's the
now I shift. Just use Zoom and I don't need any of that.
Yeah, exactly. But for those of us who still have to get
too complicated for me.
Yeah, but, I mean, the big thing for us is that I'm doing all these runs right now where I have to go hundreds and hundreds of feet, that maybe thousands of feet, and being able to.
How many cameras on some of your bigger projects would you have?
On the larger projects that I've done, I don't think I've done anything with more than 20. Like 20 cameras is where we start to go, oh, that's a lot of cameras.
That's like NFL level.
Yeah. Oh, no, we're not close to NFL level.
Oh, no, really?
No. Yeah, there are a lot more cameras than us. So, yeah, I don't know how many, but I think it's in I think that there are, 40 to 60 cameras for most NFL games. I don't know exactly what the number is, but yeah, so it's a lot. It's a lot of cameras.
Nice.
Yeah.
Blackmagic Design again. Yeah. They're doing it again. The 2110 converter and the big Ethernet switch.
Yeah.
Which somehow manages to turn 16 Ethernet ports into 48 cameras.
Well, and the thing that we're all trying to figure out now is also like Blackmagic has this new camera that we keep talking about and how it ties back into this. We hope to see one by NAB. So we're hoping at NAB we're going to see cameras sitting there, like at least a model that we can get close to and kind of figure out how big it's going to be for. It's going
to be exciting. It's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, we're hoping to see it soon.
Yeah. Thank you, Alex. Andy and Utko, pick of the week.
Great pick this week. A lot of you are probably familiar with the BBC radio show Desert Island Discs. It's been on for decades. They interview somebody at length about basically their entire careers, their entire lives. And over the course of this, they get to pick imagine that you're going to be stranded on a desert island, but you can plan ahead which 8 records would you take with you. And at the end, you also get to pick a book and one luxury item, which is fun. But mostly they're walking through their lives and careers and talking about these 8 pieces of music they've picked. This week, the guest is Sir Johnny Ive. Former head
Who likes Bananarama? It turns out.
Okay, I will say that. Okay, so he's Gen X. He's about my age. I approve of almost every track. Bananarama maybe not, because this is a Gen X list of bangers. You do have The Police. You do have.
It's really an interesting mix.
Simple Minds. You do have U2. The highlight.
You do have
however,
Harry Ives singing in the rain.
This is the best one, because this is his little boy when he was like 4 or 5. He just like saw the movie and started singing in the rain. And he tells a story about how, and he tells a story about how, like, it was wonderful, it was so cute, and then suddenly he realized that, wait a minute, I've got an iPhone in my pocket, I can record this, and talk about how great it was that, like, I would not otherwise have like set up a recording session for him, but the fact that I had it,
man, Johnny, you got the product plug in. Well done.
Well, okay, but okay, you can't be cynical when you hear this, because it is freaking adorable.
Yeah. Did he play it?
Excuse me? Yeah.
He played it?
Oh. Yeah. If you here's the deal. Here's why you want to listen to it on streaming it from the bbc.co.uk site. If you stream it this week while it's still being on the radio, you can hear the entire 52-minute program with all of the music. If you miss that, it will be released as a podcast. You'll get the entire interview, but no music.
They don't pay the license fee after broadcast.
To give it away to, like, you're not going to get the rights to, like, give away copies of a U2 song. So that's not going to work.
Yeah.
And the interview itself is wonderful. I mean, any one of us, and a lot of people who are here who are listening to this, have probably read a lot of interviews with Johnny Ive. I learned a lot of stuff that I hadn't heard before, and he just continues to impress you. He one section he's talking about the creation of the first iMac and the circumstances under which it was created, but he was also talking about, like, the handle. And to me, I just thought that, well, yeah, I mean, they put a handle on it because it's a throwback to the original Mac, which also had a handle to it. But he says, well, this is a time when people were still thinking about computers as though they were just glorified typewriters. They're still very scared by it. And I love it when a designer explains thinking that makes you see something and understand something in a new way. I don't like when designers talk as though their heads are up their butts by saying, but there's a reason why we used pine instead of white pine. It's like, so he's talking about, well, in this case where people are intimidated by computers, if we put a big handle on it and it's white and it's contrasting with the rest of it, when people walk up to it, there's something that they immediately understand about it. That, oh, this is a handle. This is where I pick it up and carry it, and that helps to break down the intimidation of the users. That, like, wow, that makes complete sense. That does not sound like BS. When I understand something about design I did not understand before. The whole conversation.
We should do that to
wonderful.
AI. If we put a handle on it, would people kind of get it more, you think? Put a handle on it.
Put a handle on it. It makes anything portable.
This thing has a handle on it. The iMac, the Mac, original Mac behind me has a handle on it. Yeah.
Now we have a show name.
Put a handle on it. That's the only reason
I'm already
I repeated
scrolling
it.
up.
You understand why I repeated it now. I guess I'm not putting one over on you, Alex Lindsay.
I just needed to get to work. That's all I.
All right. Thank you very much, Andy Anako, GBH. When's that coming up?
I was just on yesterday talking about a lot of political stuff that related to tech. So you can go to WGBH.org, WGBHnews.org to stream it. I'm going to be on a couple times in March, but I haven't got my schedule yet. But
always made me mad
this week.
When I worked in radio on the East Coast that the FCC decided that W, which has triple the syllables of, or more than that, double U of any other letter in the alphabet. Give me a break. I was so happy when I moved back out west. And
I will never stop being amused by the appropriateness of a nerdy acronym like WWW, where the acronym is actually more syllables than the actual thing itself.
9 syllables. Yeah, WYBC. It just killed me every time. That's why, by the way, they dropped the W, I think, on GBH. It's just
GBH now.
Right. Alex Lindsay, officehours.global. Q&As continue.
They continue every single morning, 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We answer questions. That's what we do. And every day, you think that today's going to be the day after 1,800 times in a row every day, including Sundays and holidays, that we won't get any questions, but it just doesn't happen.
There's always questions.
There's always another 25 questions for us to
I
chat.
did 19 years of the tech guy. There's always questions.
There's always questions. It's when people are like, how do you do it? You're like, questions. Like, don't try to make something up.
So
don't
much
try to
easier.
create something. Yeah, that works well.
So much easier. And what's coming up on Gray Matter?
We just shifted who was going to talk, so I'm not sure who's coming up next. But
go to graymatter.show and you'll find out.
Graymatter.show and you'll see the schedule. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Alex. Get to work. Get to work, buddy. Jason Snell is at sixcolors.com. His podcast at sixcolors.com/Jason. I actually have a question for you. I have reclaimed 97.01 gigabytes thanks to John Syracuse's Hyperspace. But what's this switch? Allow fun.
The fun is when you're done, it has confetti.
I missed the confetti. Damn it! I was doing a show.
That's what the fun is.
Damn.
Fun is a
And during the
user-enabled
beta
option.
process, one of the notes was added fun, and then the next beta was added more fun.
Thank you,
it is.
Jason. Sixcolors.com. Everybody must subscribe and participate and watch all your shows because there's so many great ones.
They don't need to watch all of them. Some of them will do. Just some of them would be fine.
Yeah, that's all I
had a good upgrade this week with Mike Hurley had a baby. So Casey List from the Accidental Tech Podcast was my guest this week, and I'm going to have guest hosts for the next 2 months. So that'll be fun. It'll be fun.
Casey's
Just more
great.
work for me.
That sounds like a great show. Thank you, Jason, Alex, Andy. Thanks to all of you who joined us. Thanks especially to our club members. We really appreciate you. We do MacBreak Weekly every Tuesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 1900 UTC. And I tell you those times because you can't actually watch us do it live. You don't need to. But, some small percentage of the audience likes to be there when it's happening so we can watch you and chat. That's nice for us, get some interactivity. We are streaming live on Discord for our club members, but also YouTube, Twitch, X.com, TikTok, Kick, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So pick your favorite fascist site and watch us live. After the fact, you can join us on the non-fascist twit.tv/MBW. Download audio or video there. There's a link there to the YouTube channel. Great for sharing clips with other people, which helps us spread the word. So thanks in advance. Best way to subscribe, though, of course, it's free. Get the podcast in your favorite podcast client, and you'll get it automatically, so you'll always have it the minute we're done. Thanks to John Ashley, our producer, back from his time off. Great to have you, John. Thanks to all of you for joining. We'll see you next time. Now it is my sad and solemn duty to tell you get back to work, because break time is over. Bye-bye.